look in there, I mean, rivers of Bondo from holes. I mean, not even old school enough to put chicken wire or something. It was just river. It was like, as it dried, keep adding more. He was like, I had to do what I had to do to survive.
What's going on, my Atomic Autoworks friends? So today I'm super excited because the whole reason we started this podcast is for real people in this industry, not the fluffy guys you see on TV all the time, but the guys who are the grassroots, who've done this their whole life, committed their entire lives and careers to this business and trade. And I was talking to our guest here, Jay Abbey, at the grocery store, and we were talking about, maybe coming on. I was excited because as long as I've known him, we live the same lives, deal with the same people. And I was thinking, you know what, we talked about maybe not saying some reality things that happen with some of our mutual customers, but then I said, you know what I'm going to do? True. I'm going to leave this up to Jay, and no holds barred. I'll say whatever he wants to say, punch for punch. We'll get into it.
We'll get through it.
Yeah, we'll get through it. So I'm going to start off and say, what got you into cars? You've been...
The honest truth, it really is, my father had a garage. That's how he started. He basically was in the Marine Corps, was a mechanic in the Marine Corps. And then when he got out, he opened a garage. And he had that in Bristol.
Wow.
And then had that for several years, really. And then from there, believe it or not, ended up at a hardware store. And then he bought a hardware store. But I still love cars. Because then, like any other guy, after he closed the shop, he still continued to fix cars at our house.
Yeah. So how old were you when he had the car business? Real young, or?
I was like 4 or 5.
Oh wow!
4 or 5.
Realize it's been around.
Yeah, and then again, just kept fixing cars for neighbors, friends, family for years and years and years. Did that at the house, and then my father was a Model A Ford guy. That was his thing, Model A's, because the Model A you could buy a frame, and you could put a 2-door body, a 4-door body, a truck. They were all the same.
Yeah.
So my father would just buy a frame and then decide whatever he wanted to build later. So we always had one in the garage.
Oh, that's
cool. There was
cool.
always one going on, constantly. And then I was 14. I bought my first 76 Monte Carlo.
Nice.
And that's where it all started. And then from there, I bought and sold cars, and you made $200 or $300. Back then was the world.
Yeah.
And I just kept going from there and just kind of kept going. And then I went to school to be a mechanic first. I actually went to school to be an auto mechanic.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I ended up buying a 69 Nova SS big block car, 4-speed. Needed to have some body work done on it and some metal work done on it. Met a guy that done some work for another guy that I knew. I paid him. Then he wanted more money, which I was fine with. We found some problems, like any other car. He found some problems.
Now we know, no.
And then, but the thing is, I paid him to weld on some pieces and do some things, and I got the car back, and it was beautiful. Oh, he did it was wonderful. The guy did a fantastic job. But then 3 months later, chunks of Bondo fell out where, just a rider wheel well lip that he was supposed to weld and fix for me, he didn't do. And I was really more upset because I was like 17. I don't understand why you would screw a 17-year-old kid. I was learning you. So it kind of put a bad taste in my mouth. And so then I ran into another friend of mine, and him and I fixed the car, and I actually bought him a welder. He didn't have a welder, so we bought a welder. He did the old brazing at the time. We bought a MIG welder, and I was at his house, learning how to MIG weld, started liking body work more than I liked being a mechanic. And I like doing body work, and that's kind of the evolution of it.
Once you smell that Bondo.
The Bondo, the melted metal and all that, you're like, wow, this is cool. I think the part I liked the most was when you took something and then you made something.
Yeah. That's so rewarding at the end.
That's what I liked. That's the part that first got me in. The fabricating was definitely the first part that got me the most excited. That was the most exciting.
And you lean a lot towards, because you do a lot of metal fabrication at the shops you worked at in the past and stuff like that. That was kind of like your
I mostly go in and do the fabricating, yes.
So then after that, you went to, because I know you said you worked for Joe over at Middletown. That was later in life, or that was early on, or?
Yeah, then when I got divorced from my first wife and everything, and met my second wife, and then basically how I ended up in Middletown was, her parents lived on the shoreline. My parents lived in the middle of the state. We wanted somewhere in the middle. So we ended up in Middletown. And then I ended up I ended up at New England Power Equipment doing tractors. I worked for John Deere, basically.
Oh, wow.
I was a field technician.
It's fun. I always thought, because you know everybody, like we know all the same people. I just thought you grew up in Middletown because you know everybody.
And I probably know people I shouldn't know.
Yeah, we all do. Yeah, I know.
So, I do. I know a lot. And then a lot of people have come up to me and they said that. They always thought I was here. But then again, you and I have discussed this many times over the times you and I have talked, how the car community, it's big, but it's also small.
Very small, yeah.
It's not, it's the same people, the same time at cruise nights and car shows. It becomes very repetitive, and you see these people all the time. And so that's why, I think that's why we ended up knowing so many of the same people, having crossovers of doing work, you doing the interior, especially when you were doing a lot more interiors, and having the crossover of customers, which, always worked out good until, we had one bad experience at one time. But, and that was not our fault.
No, none of that was.
That was not our fault.
It was funny for me because it's the misery enjoys company thing. As soon as you and I talked,
and we straightened it out.
Yeah, and it's true because you know what's funny? When two people have the exact same experience, and with like multiple people, it's hard because it's like so many people, like these local people that you see, they might not have the money, or if they do, they just don't want to spend it, but they want to show all their buddies how great they are. So then they'll use I don't know how you met the one individual I know we're talking about, but he came into us through a good friend of mine as a recommendation in a spot to try to help out. So now, and it's like we talk, every time you help someone out, you look like the bad guy.
Yeah.
And so it's like there's a lot of that in the car community, which drives me crazy because you want to be here to help them, but then they never once say the truth that they don't. Like with this one individual, his entire budget to do that full interior was $2,000 or $2,500.
Right. And it was, and if correct me if I'm wrong.
Yep.
I was told too. That's back when you were experimenting with the metal. I guess you were doing something different. You were trying to do a new twist because it was incredible what you did.
Yep.
But like you said, it's a new thing we're trying. And when I got the car, it was not done.
Yeah.
He was aware of that. It wasn't done. You told him it wasn't done because, again, it was experimenting. You didn't finish everything. It wasn't done.
The hard part was when he came in, like I said, it was $2,500. He says, take as long as you want on it. And we're developing a new product for our seats and stuff like that, some stanchions and things like that. But it costs a lot of money to do that stuff. And you get to a point where you're like, how much free work can you do for this person? And it just got to a point where, once you hear someone telling everybody they're paying all this money, and even though your agreement on a handshake is that they're like, leave it for the entire winter, take your time, use it. Right. They're telling their guys like, I paid all this money, it's not getting done, and you're like, oh man, this happens a lot in this business, and that's why I kind of got burnt out, and I'm like, I don't even want to deal with those people ever again.
Exactly, and that's why. And then of course, when the car ended up coming to me to do what I wanted to do on it, it was the same thing. It was like, I only had the car for a few weeks, but it was
massive work that needed to be done in that car. I was shocked when he said what you charged him. Like he complained about it, and I was like, Jay just not only did you a solid, did you a miracle.
Yeah.
Because there was dents this big on it. It was like
it got a little crazy. But again, like you said, I thought, well, let me do the right thing. Let me bring the car up a little farther.
Yep.
And make it a better product and have it be a little nicer car, and it ended up biting both you and me, which again I was fine with that part. That part I was okay because when I kind of got to know the person, I was like, this guy. It was a bad decision on my part, but I think what bothered me in the end was, I think when it got back to me that like you were mad at me and upset with me, I was like, wait a minute. Okay, this doesn't sound right. Then when I ran into you at AutoZone, I don't know if we're allowed to say a name like that.
Yeah.
I ran into you, and you're looking at me, and I'm looking at you, and I'm like, I think we need to talk about something. And then when you and I sat down and talked about it, it all started making sense, and it all kind of calmed down, and then it made sense. And then when we looked at the narrative and like, okay, we know what the problem was.
Yeah.
So I'm just glad that we resolved it because the particular customer has gone on to screw other people.
Yeah.
So,
what's funny is threw me off on the one thing where I knew at the end this guy was just kind of batshit crazy was I saw him, I've forgotten what store it was, somewhere, and he, I just heard through, and when you hear someone MFing you and saying like, me and you are in a fight and starting all this shit, once you hear from multiple people, the person is probably the instigator. So I saw him and I said, what's the problem? I heard you have a big beef. I said, I felt everybody took care of you way more than you paid for it. And he goes, oh, no. He goes, my only problem is, he goes, my door's falling off the car. I'm like, well,
it's got nothing to do with anybody.
yeah, that neither of us touched that. Yeah. So I go, oh, your door's falling off. I go, you want me to take a look at it? And it's, the hinge on the inside is all rotten off. You didn't touch it. I didn't touch it. It had nothing to do with either of us.
It was a junkyard car.
It was a POS. Yeah.
So and again, it all happened as well, and that was years ago.
Yeah.
Water under the bridge. The fact that you and I have since, obviously, that was. Christ, it had to be 10, 11 years ago.
Oh, it was a long time, yeah.
So it was a long time ago. So the fact that we've moved on, I've moved on from it. I've certainly done well for myself over the last few years. So I've moved on, and you just wipe that one under the. I learned something new in business.
Well,
today.
I don't know if I told you, it was hilarious. Is he goes, when he said that, I said, well, why don't you just bring it by the shop? I'll fix it for you. I don't know, neither of us, Jay or me, have anything to do with this, but I'll fix it for you. Don't worry about it for free. And he's like, well, I don't want to leave it because I don't know how long you'll do it, because if you're doing it for free, I said, well, you could wait. I'll just do it while you wait. He goes, well, I don't know when I could get there. I go, how about right now? Yeah. And so then I'm like, no matter what you tell the guy, so I go, you know what? Exactly. And I did the same thing. I didn't really give a shit, because you're like, it was just sometimes it's one of those things where like you loan someone $20, you never see him again.
Yeah.
And it's like the hardest part is like I hate is like Rick was at a car show, and when he first started working here, and he sees him. Yeah. And he's like talking shit. The same thing. These guys, that's all they do is they talk shit. And Rick came back and told me, and then I explained it to him. And then after working here for years now, he laughs because he sees how much we do for people.
Yeah.
So when someone says, and the funny part is when someone says, which I know you stand behind your work too, is if they say they have a problem with us, that we won't take care of it. And you're like, well, that's horse shit, because I pretty much a lifetime warranty. As long as we're alive, you do the right thing.
And look, I will never say I'm perfect. Yeah. I wake up every day and there's a mistake, there's a problem. That the whole idea behind any business, I think, is to recognize a problem and be able to resolve it. Who taught me body work and painting was you become better when you know how to get yourself out of a situation. It's when you do all your body work, you do all your priming, and then you get a crinkle.
Yeah.
A good guy knows how to get out of it. Doesn't panic, doesn't relax, and that's what I was always told. Because every day there's going to be a problem. There's always going to be something. There's always going to be something. So whether or not it's a life situation, whether or not it's a metal work, whether or not it's body work, whether or not it's painting, just everyday things in life, there's always going to be a problem. And how you just get through it all is to get through it all, and to be able to make yourself better at it, and to make yourself better at life situations. And with business, you learn to choose better customers, decide if you should not work for certain people because it won't be good for you or them. And those are things that you learn. And I've been at my shop now for 17 years, and I'm still learning, and I'm still making mistakes. And I'm getting close to retiring. As I'm almost 60, I'm getting close to retiring. And so I'm saying to myself, it's maybe time to hang it up and just go work for somebody a little bit as time goes on. I could never just sit home, but I'm limited to how much I could do after having all my health problems over the years. So, but it's the life cycle of things that I've learned through business, through doing cars, and I think it's made me make some better decisions.
You learn a lot. You learn a lot when it's painful.
Yes, but you also learn a lot. But then again, I think I've had some great customers. Oh my God, they're the nicest people. They're the opposite. They want you to do more for them. You want to do more for them, and they've taught me that, man, there's just a lot of good people out there too that are just amazing. I had a gentleman I did a '55 Chevy for that. I mean, he was in the hospital sick and was just telling his wife, "You got to get to the shop to give Jay money." He worried more about me than he worried about himself. And to this day, we're such good friends. And over the last 2 years, the car's won, 70 trophies. Nice. And to him, he's happy, and he loves trophies. That's his thing. He loves them. And he's made a whole new wall of all the trophies, and I'm proud of the car. Nice. I did a lot of work, a roof, A-pillars, new fenders, new hood, cut the quarters, put quarters. It was just a lot of work, and the car came out nice, and he's so proud of it. What makes me happy is all summer long, I get pictures, and I'm at this show, and we won this, and I always tell people, because I painted it like this black cherry color, and he just now that's the other side. That's the part like, wow, that's good. And every Sunday, I wait for the ding, 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 the text messages, because here it comes.
Yeah, nice.
Here's Ed, but I'm getting on, boom, 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 boom. Here comes all the pictures. So there's the other side of the coin, and honestly, when I sit here now, thinking about it, talking to you, I've got a lot more of those than I do.
You usually do. The hard part about the bad ones is they stick with you. It's just it's not, I won't say they stick, it's just like you could be in the best mood ever, and I always say it affects your good customers, because sometimes I would take my good customers and say, okay, I got to go deal with this guy. And you're like, you should be like, just get the hell out of here and just stay with your good customers. And there's always been a problem. And it was actually kind of funny, because I won't say the name of the company, but my wife worked for this company. And they have a policy that any individual who's upset, just get pushed to the back and you move to the next one, right?
Oh, yeah.
And my wife had always said, she goes, the problem with me, and it's always been a problem, is that if there's a problem, I have to fix it. So if you have a problem with me, I want to make sure we get it done.
Right.
But you don't realize that while I'm working on this one, the guy that's waiting over here, now he's a problem.
Of course.
So it was kind of a different philosophy to see that. And the bad guys sometimes outweigh it, which is, it's crazy, but it's awesome to have the good customer.
I got another friend of mine that does the same thing we do.
Yep.
And he's got a nice shop, and I was talking to him yesterday.
Yep.
Over the last couple of days, he's called me because he's got a problem.
Yep.
And he's been in business a long time too. He's more your age, a little younger. So, and he's been at it a long time too. And he's got that thorn. He's got it. So he's calling me, asking me what to do. And I'm like, well, the problem is you got other cars. He's a one-man operation like me. And he's like, I just don't know what to do. I go, the problem is you don't want to lose your good customers for a bad one.
Yeah.
And I said, the problem is, not only did you call me today, you called me yesterday. You called me last week. Because you're so upset about this guy that he's occupying a very bad space in your head.
Yep.
And for what? Your shop's full. You got a lot of work. You got plenty of work. He's got a beautiful paint booth. I mean, he's got.
I think when people are people pleasers, maybe that's probably what ruins it. We probably should never be in business when you care too much.
Well, he's a good sized dude too. Yeah. He's tall. He's he's a good guy. I don't know if I'd want to tangle with him. And I'm just saying to myself, wow, he could be tough. And it's funny because same thing. He's obviously worried about his reputation, obviously worried about, I'm in business. And I said, don't worry, it's going to blow over. That one guy, you're not the first person that guy's done that to.
Yeah.
There's whatever in life. I don't get the guys
happens,
people have worked in his house. He's done that to other people. So I said, move on, just move on. I said, probably part of it, getting older. I'm certainly mellowed out quite a bit from my younger self, and I don't sit there and think about it. My wife, being a social worker, uses bigger words than I know how to use, but and I try not to let these people get in my head, and I'm trying to talk. I wasn't trying to talk him off the ledge, but just trying to calm him down, because he was trying. I give him credit. He was really trying to make a correct decision, not a hasty one, not a bad one, just a correct decision for him, his own self, his business, his wife. Trying to because he was going home.
I think a lot of customers don't realize that you're dealing with a shop that's a person. When they deal with you, they're dealing with you, and if you have health issues, you have this issues, you're still dealing with the person, and everybody wants that one-on-one connection with the shop, but then they also want it done yesterday for Walmart prices, which is like impossible.
Well, plus they also people don't understand that we come into our business, you come in, you do your work, but then, of course, you still have to do your paperwork. Yeah. You have to do your taxes. You have to do the accounting part of it. So it just doesn't end. It doesn't start when you open the key, and it doesn't end when you lock the door. When you're small like us, you are it. You're the face. You're the salesman. You're every part of that business. I'm just me. Yeah. I have nobody else that works for me. I've had part-timers over the years, but I'm just me. And I only take what I can handle, and I do big stuff.
Yeah.
That's kind of my specialty. Floors, frame rails.
Every time I've ever seen, like when I used to go over with Pete and stuff like that, which is Pete still around? I haven't seen him forever. Everything you're doing is always huge metalwork.
Big.
Yeah,
big.
It's always big. And that's funny because I see a lot of the younger guys that working on the new Hondas and all that stuff. They don't understand what it's like to tear a car. When you're sitting in the car, looking at a car, and the quarter panels, the inner and outer wheel wells are off, the floor pans are all that stuff, and then you're like going, I have the roof, and everything has to go back together.
I honestly just had two jobs. I just had both 67 Camaros. One was a 67 hardtop, new roof, new floors, new full rockers, and I mean full rockers right up into the A-pillar. I mean, people, and again, but here's the other thing. People don't know how a car really comes apart. If something is rotted in the middle of the car, do you realize what it takes to get to the middle of the car? Because people don't understand that every car, even today's cars, they start off with just a floor pan on a jig going down an assembly line, just like they did in 67, 8, and 9, and on. So, but when something is rotted that deep in, what you've got to tear apart to get to that.
Everything.
Because again, like the analogy of you can't build a house without a good foundation. A car is the exact same thing.
Yep.
If the floor is no good, the braces are no good, that hold the rest of it, you're already done.
Yeah.
You're already done, or you're wasting your time and that person's money. You're wasting.
It's too much.
And if they don't want to do that, then you need to really actually step away from it. It's already done. You're setting yourself up for failure. And a lot of guys have Mickey Mouse things, and you've had bad repairs come into your shop that, like, why'd the guy ever do that? I got another one in my shop now that was at different shops, and it was just never. It was attempted to be fixed during certain things, but it was just never fixed right.
And if they just did it right the first time,
if it
they'd
did
be
right,
so much
he
farther.
would have had the other problems that have led into this.
Yeah.
So and it's that's business.
Yeah.
I've learned now if a customer doesn't really want to fix all those things, I'm out.
Sayonara.
I'm out. So those are the things that I've learned to say. Something, I'm all set. I'm good. Well, how come you don't want to work on my car? I do want to work on your car, but you just don't want to fix it correctly. And I can't do that because it's not going to be correct.
It's funny because I noticed years ago when I was a kid, the old timers back then, probably like our age when we were kids, they used to say they would rather take the vehicle and start it and do it right, because at any given point, if you stopped in a good place. Like we're saying now, where we learn, keep on fixing, you're fixing all the rust on the outside, but you're not getting to the beginning. Right. If you just fix that in the beginning, then a year from now, you could put the rockers on it, and a year from now, you could put the fenders on it, and you'd have that progression. But now it seems like, for me at least, the old timers, the people who cared more about the quality of it and doing it right, are overpowered by the people that want it done like a TV show overnight, cheaper. And the prices right now are so astronomical. Sometimes I get scared just telling the people, what it
the
actually
material
costs.
Are going to be.
It's incredible.
It is incredible. I just, I've gotten away from doing little collision stuff. I don't really do too much of that anymore, but I just had a friend of mine's daughter that got in a little bit of a fender bender that I fixed. And just to go get a little half pint of paint and everything, now it's like, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
How much was that?
Yeah. Can I leave my children here?
Yeah. I was like, so when you're looking, I'm sitting there, wow. So that by the time I got done, fixing the trunk lid, buying the paint, but I pulled out the dent. All the other shops wanted to replace the trunk lid. I was like, I'm going to fix it. And I fixed it. And beautiful, nice little skim coat. Everything was nice. It went, I don't know, the job went really well. But by the time I got done buying the paint, I had to make a little tool to get up in there to knock out the dent, do everything. And I bought the paint, then the masking paper, which I got, and the tape, and then the plastic, and then the clear coat, and then the wet sand, and then the buffing. I'm like, and then you look, a lot of waste in this business.
Yeah.
A lot of waste.
Yeah.
Let's face it.
Yeah.
80% of the stuff we buy ends up in the garbage can, if not more than 80%.
Yeah.
It all ends up in the garbage can. When I looked at it, I was like, man, that was a lot of effort for a little, dent. It was a lot of effort.
It's amazing. Like every day I look at the prices because I know like what a wholesale fender is going for now. It's going for the exact same price as it was 20 years ago.
On the retail end, though.
Yeah. No, I mean even wholesale, it's because like we were talking about, like some of these guys like in Waterbury and Bridgeport, they're doing like a dent on a fender for $250.
Yeah.
And it used to be like I remember 20 years ago, a $250 panel was if it had a ding and a ding, you fixed those dings, you scored it and done. Now they're coming in with rust holes this big, they're caved in, and these people are like $250. Well, at $250 20 years ago, our materials might have cost us $20.
Right.
Now they're costing $200.
Yeah.
And like you're saying, 6 hours of work. So you're like, the numbers just don't jive anymore.
No, they don't jive anymore.
What is going on? And I know, guys, I don't want to interrupt the podcast, and we never want to talk about sponsorship, advertising, endorsements, but we wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for our sponsors. And we'd like to give a special shout out to Kohl's Products. Kohl's Products has been in the automotive industry for a long time. A lot of you have probably seen them in all the big box stores, all the part stores. They are everywhere. So you could go there, you could see their products, you could purchase them, and they're all about making your car look good and protect it at the same time. One thing that I love about Kohl's Products is they're located right here in New England. And even though we're a worldwide podcast, we really are home-based, grassroots. We love New England. We love supporting New England businesses, and Kohl's Products is one of those. If you end up going to any of the box stores, any of the part stores, all the big guys, and you don't see what you like, you could always go to KohlsProducts.com. And remember, Kohl's Products is COWLES products.com. Check them out. You could actually see installation videos there. All the cool products that they have, a lot of stuff that you might not see in the stores is available online on their website. So check them out. And if you're at one of the big part stores and they don't have what you want there, make sure to grab one of those counter guys. Tell them to tell their managers. Tell that managers to tell their bosses, and their bosses to tell their bosses, and their bosses to tell their bosses to finally get your products on the shelf. Thank you. Now let's get back to our video.
And it's now, like, I got away from the quarter panel repairs on trucks, the crossover frame repair. I got away from all that. Not because, believe it or not, not because I didn't like doing it. Well, I got away from it because of, I don't want to put that much money into it.
Yeah.
Okay. I get it. I understand it, but I still got to do the work. It's not any less work for me because you don't want to do that. So for me, I was just like, it's just easier just to not do the work, because there's plenty of restoration work out there. There's so much of it out there, and that's why I think I'm able to be friends with guys like you and other friends of mine in other shops that we all do the same thing, because we all have the same problems. I've worked at a lot of shops over my career. And every shop I've ever worked at has got the 3 or 4 cars in the back that the customer stopped paying on. They've run out of money. It's in storage. Don't let anybody kid you. Every shop has the same problem.
You know what I think is hilarious? I've noticed this year, and this has happened before, because I used to have I only do restorations because I'm an idiot and I love the shit.
I do too.
It's just there's no money in it, and I know that. And a couple of my buddies who had very good body shops would always tell me, you're an idiot. There's no money in it. The money's in collision. I don't like the collision side. I think I would rather chop my toenails off.
Yeah.
And they're trying to do collision work now because the body business is so messed up. So they're trying to do restoration work rather.
I get what you're saying, how there's no money in the restoration, and there isn't if you don't have the right customers. Yeah. And when I mean the right customers, at least a customer who actually has somewhat of a realistic budget.
Yeah.
It's these people that think
the dreamers
that they're going to get a Camaro, Mustang, Chevelle, whatever.
Yeah.
With full floors and frame rails and rockers and inner and outer wheel wells, and they think they're going to get it all done plus the paint job for 15, 20 grand. Yeah, today, just the sheet metal alone is going to be 7, 8, 9, 10 grand, 15 grand.
Easy. Yeah.
Just sheet metal. Yeah. And that's the thing I tell people. Look, here's your sheet metal cost. Here's your body work cost. Here's the primer and other materials, all the way out to paint. And then they look at you, really? And I whether or not whatever shop chooses to mark up, the materials, or not mark up, whatever you want to try, maybe help to be a good guy, not save the customer a little bit of money and this and that. That's to the discretion of the shop, but it becomes realistic. So I think now I work harder at trying to find a customer that at least has a real budget, that wants to do the things. And again, I'm just a small little one-man operation, so my overhead is extremely low.
Well, I honestly think that's where the business is going to go. I talked to a couple of guys that I know that have been in business for a long time, as we were, think it's going to be one-man operations or two-man operations, and with a really low overhead, that do it for passion. You can make a living at it and go. But the hard part is to take that next step to try to have many employees and do it. The overhead becomes so much money, and the labor. Like I just added up for that just the Mustang this morning alone for what was done on it. I went through and gave our customer the actual price on what it would be, and that actual price was actually the wholesale price.
Right.
You know, so I go, this is a wholesale price of where we were at to do just that little bit of work we're at. And when I did it like we're supposed to be, it was at $19,800.
Right.
And I mean, I look at it and I go, it doesn't look like anything, but I know we were here adamantly working on it and going through that. So when you sit there and go, unless you could actually charge your retail price, full price, hour for hour, material for material with a markup and do it, you can't really have like 4 employees and have a big overhead or a shop, because it's just every job. That's what we're talking about. There's one guy I know that does interiors out in the Midwest, phenomenal stuff. He charges 20 or 30 grand for a serious interior.
Right.
Has a beautiful house in the middle of nowhere. And if you're out there and you're making a couple grand a week for yourself and it's going to your house, that's great. That's incredible.
Right.
But if you're running a shop, that couple thousand becomes 8,000 a week,
yeah.
and 8,000 a week times 10 weeks is 80,000. You know, so it's like a huge difference.
Of course, too, you go down into different parts of the country, you can get away with different things. You can go down into Florida and you can have a body shop out in your backyard, and Florida will let you do it.
Yeah, that's true too.
You can't do that here in Connecticut.
Oh my God, no.
Those are things you can't do in Connecticut. There's certain regulations. You can go a lot of through the South and through the Midwest where the regulations are totally different. Obviously, you go out to California. California won't even let new body shops open up.
Yeah.
They've gotten pretty stringent on how it's going to be. Now, but of course, people don't realize our weather comes from the west to the east. So that's why, that's kind of why they do it. Really helps us. But now, all through the Midwest, I mean, any guy can open up anything in their back garage, and there's very little regulations on it, So so that becomes a little different. That's why some of those guys can get away with some of the things they do. And again, but they're also very talented guys. I mean, there's some, like you said, there are some very talented guys. I don't consider myself that talented. I'm just a guy that just likes doing it. I still like doing it. I still like it. I still enjoy doing it. I love the fabricating. I got a 69 Z28 in my shop right now that the guy bought in 1973. He hasn't driven it since really 78. It's only got 40,000 miles on it.
Wow.
And he brought it to a couple other places where I had a couple other people look at it. And of course, they want to blow it all apart. They want to put it on a rotisserie. He just didn't want that because it still has all the original. The floor is mint.
Wow.
The frame rails are mint. The trunk, when you look at it, it looks brand new.
It's so amazing when you see that.
He kept it very nice. So he kept saying, I just don't want to go that far. It doesn't need it. It still has the original 55-year-old undercoating underneath it. So I don't understand why take it all off just to put undercoating back on. He couldn't understand it, to put $100,000, but to do a whole bunch of unnecessary work. So when I went and looked at it, and he really, really wanted to preserve anything he could keep. It was all about original. He even wanted to keep the carpet. I was like, the mouse stuff, is a little rough. Even though he had it in a really nice garage underneath his house. Really, really nice garage. And but the mice got to it. I mean, it's been there for 40 years. It's just been sitting there, So but now understanding that, of course, all the control arm bushings, everything rubber is dried out and rotted. So I'm like, okay. So he's telling me what he wants. So it's my job is to listen to what he wants.
Yep.
It's his car, So I'm looking at it, and then I start to think, he's absolutely right. I don't understand why you got to do all this. I get what he wants to do. So I said, okay, I'm on board. I get what you're saying, and but it's still going to be X amount of dollars to at least get it to paint. It's never had nice paint. Every dent and ding on this car was on it when I bought it. He goes, it's never had a nice paint job, and that's really what he wants. I'm like, okay, but there's some rust. So I'm like, okay. So basically, I get the car to my shop, and like when I take off the front fender, like the lip in the front of the wheel well where it meets the fender extension, it was rusted, and now most shops, oh dude. We're going to replace his fender.
Yeah.
And he's all about, Jay, can we fix it? I'm like, yeah, I can make all that.
There's not a lot of guys who still are able to fix stuff and make it look nice.
I ain't going to lie. I had to dust off some of the machine. I had to dust off the planishing hammer. I had to dust off, my bead roller. I had to, kind of clean off because I haven't used some of that stuff for a little bit. And because everybody else been R&R, move and replace,
that's the business.
So I'm like, okay. So the next thing I took the inner fender was rotted in the corner, and he was all about, man, And that was the only thing really wrong. Can we save it? It was all right along the edge. Yeah, I'll make it all. And in the end, when I really thought about it, if I bought the new inner fender, which are crappy.
Yeah, they're junk now, yeah.
They're junk. They usually come in twisted.
Yep.
So when they come in, they're all twisted. And by the time you hog out all the holes and you get it all to finally fit, in the end, man, I had a lot of labor. It's a new part.
Yeah, yeah.
Now I get to scuff it and spray it 60-40 satin,
And a lot of people don't understand that when you get a new part that you actually have to put the work into it.
Yeah.
They think you just put it on the...
So I did all that. Boy, and then, of course, that original inner fender went right back in, both of the car. And I've got the car all bolted back together. And I fixed just a little rust in the corners, And again, but I had to kind of brush off some skills that I had to use for a little bit because most people just, put a whole new quarter panel on or do this, do that. So then I worked my way around the car. I get to the left side quarter panel, and I noticed there's a little bit more rot. A couple things aren't looking quite right, so I start grinding, and I'm getting through some Bondo, and I see the deadly rivet.
Oh, yeah.
Rivet.
Bondo
and
over rivet.
There's the rivet.
Yeah.
And then I start seeing the ball peen hammer marks, and then I also, the car's rally green, and I hit a little blue. I'm like, blue? Now he bought it in 1973. So the car wasn't that old.
Yeah, and that's how they fixed stuff back then, too.
Right.
It was different.
Not only what somebody did is they put a used quarter panel off a dusk blue 69 Camaro, which is kind of ironic because he was also looking at a dusk blue 69 Z28 at the time.
Got both.
So I said, well, you ended up with a little bit of dust blue on your car. So of course, I cut it all off. It was a skin.
Yep.
I cut it all off, and I'm sitting there looking at it, and I call him up, and he comes and look at it. Of course, the original old quarters on it with the air chisel marks,
Yeah.
So I said, well, what do you want to do? And he goes, well, what can we do? I said, the door jam's beautiful. All the window channels beautiful. The trunk everything's mint. And they said they left an 1.5 inch. So I'll put a skin on it. I said, it's a little old school to weld the whole entire skin.
Yeah.
But if you really want to keep the original jam, because it's all good.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. And it's all good. I said, I'll do it. It's a little bit more work for me. I got to do an outer wheel well. I said, a little bit of work for me, but I understand that 70% of the original or 60% of the original sheet metal.
Yeah, it's hard because
there,
sometimes you wonder at what point is it original. It's not just a knockoff.
He really wants to
aftermarket.
keep all that, and I get it. So the only thing that will be aftermarket will be that one skin. So, but it was a decision I didn't make. I called them.
Yeah.
What do you want to do? Here's our options. This is what we can do. And I put on 1 million because that's what I specialize, 67, 8, and 69 Camaros. Yep. I said, I've done 1 million of them, and I know how they're going to fit, and I know what we're going to run into. So he goes, no, can we do that? I said, yeah, that's fine, but of course, I'm going to spend a whole day welding on a skin. But
it's a lot.
It's worth it. But it's worth.
It's funny because I missed that. So when I was a kid, and that's when you got into cars. That's what you did because that was the way you fixed them in the 70s and 80s.
Well, at one point, there was no option.
Yeah. You just do that, and then you see that. You're my favorites because we got one here now. When you pop the trunk and you see the wormholes of Bondo coming.
Oh yeah, it comes through. Yeah. I did that with I had a Ford. What was that? I think it was a Ford. Like I forgot what it was. I forgot what kind of car it was. I don't know. The guy had bought it years ago. But anyway, he had one of those hoop garages, and we had a hailstorm, and it busted right through the hoop garage, and it had 1,000 hail dings all over it. So he calls me up to go look at it, and I get there and I look at it, and I go, well, what's the car itself like? He goes, no, it's a good solid car. Well, we pull out the trunk, and I look in there. I mean, rivers of Bondo from holes. I mean, not even old school enough to put chicken wire or something. It was just river. It was like as it dried, keep adding more. He was like. And I'm looking at him, go, how long have you had the car? Oh, 8 years. You never moved that to see that?
Yeah.
Never? He goes, no, I never knew. I never knew. So I was like, well, what would you want to do to fix that? Because it was starting to, the only reason let's look a little deeper because I was seeing the blistering. Yeah. And, Bondo and water don't like each other.
No.
So, so when we found that, what would you want to do? And, besides the 500 hail dings on it, well, what else would you want to do? That led into, I think I'm going to just sell the car.
Yeah.
And he did. So that's what he ended up doing. That's what he ended up doing later on in life.
It's funny. I remember when I was a kid, I worked for Dave over at Auto Bite Supplier. And it was him and 2 other guys. And I remember, I never seen anything like that in my life. But they basically took a big piece of cardboard and they all spread out like 3 gallons of Bondo on the cardboard, and they're all mixing the whole thing up, and they just pick it up and slap it on the quarter panel. As soon as it dries, they pull it off and start carving that thing. I was like, oh man, that was scary.
I mean, you look at some of the old school guys. I mean, I don't get me wrong, and I'm sure you've had quite a few of them. I've had some cars come in that were repaired 25, 30 years ago, and they're still, reasonably held together.
Yeah.
And but they're finally starting to. But when you look, I mean, the craftsmanship for that time was actually pretty good. It held together for 25, 30 years. Again, not a properly done repair, but it still held together. Yeah. And of course, as you and I both know, cars rot from the inside out. They don't rot from the outside in. So even when I'm done with a car with people, I tell people all the time, don't get involved in, I don't ever want to take it out in the rain. But do you wash it? They're like, yeah. So I'm going to ask you one thing. If you're afraid to get caught in a rainstorm while you're moving, so the rain's not going in the car, it's sheeting off it, but yet you're willing to take a garden hose and put 50, 60 gallons of water on a car while you're washing it.
Into every jam.
That's going down through the seals. Again, these cars aren't made like today's cars. Yeah. So you're going to sit there and wash the car because you're doing the right thing, because you're washing the little bit of dust that's on it instead of taking a wet cloth and just wiping it down. But you're going to do that, and then you're like 2 years, 4, 5, 6 years later, like, man, the car's starting to rust again because you're piling the water right back in again. And was it really ever that dirty? Was it dirty enough to really wash it? I mean, if you get caught in a rainstorm, I tell my customers, when you get home, if you have a little air compressor, fire it up, try and get out your water, and just leave it. And because there's usually a ton of wax on them. Just chill out.
Yeah, well, they take care of this stuff.
Let them dry. And then when you come out there, get yourself a nice, fiber towel, get it wet, and just go over it nice and light. Just
dry wash it.
Yeah, it's real simple. Because again, these cars, they're show cars, whatever you want to call them, cruise night cars. They got a lot of wax on them. They're taken care of. But I think, I could be wrong, and people may disagree with me, but to go home and start putting garden hoses on them and start washing them.
Yeah, it's like, why bother? It's so funny because we were talking about the Bondo and stuff. And I remember, what cracks me up is some of the guys I've seen that I know that were really good body guys. And this is one of the reasons why I do it, but I do it reluctantly. Every time I do bare metal, I epoxy it before we Bondo it. But I only do it because I know it's the right thing to do. However, all the old guys that I know that were good, that never did that, the shit is still good.
Right, bare metal.
Yeah, bare metal Bondo. And I know they say it's different now. The fillers are different than what we are used to using and all that stuff. But it's just amazing me that I'll see a car that's, a reputable person did 30 or 40 years ago, and you grind it down because it was hit and it's fine.
I do both. Honestly, I epoxy and I also do bare metal. I got other friends of mine that, same thing like me, they do both. If a customer wants epoxy, they'll put the epoxy on it. If not, I've also stripping down the bare metal, put the bite in it to do the Bondo. Because the new Bondos today don't get nowhere near as hot when you put the hardener in them, so they have a tendency not to have that.
And they're made to go on a lot thin. Like you can put them over 180 scratches. Yeah. Where I remember, back in the day,
36 scratch. Yeah.
You couldn't get that.
You hit it with your clothes. You rip your shirt open. You're like, damn. But yeah, it's changed. Actually, a lot of people don't realize too. The United States, we're much further behind in products than like Europe.
Oh my God, they do everything different.
Yeah. They do everything different. Yeah. First of all, they save everything. Yep. And we're much farther behind. So I was just given a new Bondo to try. And I was told it's like peanut butter. I'm like, really? And you don't need that much hardener. Doesn't get hot. I'm open-minded enough. I'll give it a shot. What am I going to lose? I'm going to give it a shot. So I get it. And it was only $40 compared to $125, $130. So I'm going to try. I open up the can. First of all, the gallon was actually full.
Oh,
I was like, wow. It wasn't 3/4.
Yeah, for $140. Yeah.
It was full. I'm like, wow, look at that. It was full. I was surprised. And the tube of hardener was a little bit bigger than a normal tube of hardener. Yeah. Now, I got a friend of mine that when he buys a gallon of Bondo, he buys 4 hardeners.
Yeah.
Which
a lot of guys say that
not what you're supposed to do with Bondo, because that makes it brittle.
It's funny because everybody's just saying now, like the higher end guys, like all the linear block guys and all those guys, they say you have to weigh out your hardener to body filler because you almost use twice what you would use. Right. Which is crazy because I still don't weigh it. I'm still like inch per golf ball size.
Yeah. So I tried this Bondo, so I'm like, well, I'm going to try it on that 69 Camaro that I'm doing. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to try it. How's it stand? Well, stands great. Got a couple guys out there that are going to love it. I said, okay, I'm going to give it a shot. And of course, but when I first scooping it out, I'm like, wow. Like, really is? You almost do want to lick it. Like, ah. So I put it, I put it on my board, because speaking of linear blocks, I got the linear blocks and I got the big Bondo board that he sells. Colton's the great guy that owns that company. Great guy. So anyway, I end up mixing it. I'm like, but it doesn't change color.
Oh.
So it stays green. And I'm like, okay, so, but you got the time to mix it. But here's the thing. When you're mixing Bondo, as you're kneading it or rolling it, whatever you want to call it, it gets the air bubbles.
Yeah.
Pops up. Doesn't do that.
It's that creamy, yeah.
I'm like, okay. And then this is without adding Bondo honey, no nothing.
Yeah.
And of course, other Bondo, you would feel it would start to get warm.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, well, it's not even getting warm. Boy, I tell you, and I'm skimming it onto the door. But of course, I like to take out my dents and dings. I don't want to leave them.
Yeah.
I'm behind. I get it all out. I want I want what Bondo was made for. A little skim coat, leaving me out. I put it all on, and I got my heat lamp. I don't like to put it too hot. It kept it far away. 15 minutes later, I like to let things dry. I'm not in that when it's still a little tacky I can't stand cheese graters.
Yeah.
Why am I putting that deep of a scratch? That makes no sense to me.
Yeah, cheese graters.
It doesn't make. I'm not a 36, 40 grit guy. I'm not any of that. To me, it's just more work. It's already telling me I got to do another coat of Bondo. That's all that stuff tells me. I'm not saying I'm right or wrong. That's just the way I like to do it.
It's funny because it's even this day and age, everybody still does it differently.
Right.
It always cracks me up like that. And I don't know if it's because we've always, well, actually, no, because we changed. I use cheese graters for shaving motorcycle seat foam, but I'll never put it on Bondo.
Right, but you're doing that, of course, but you're also doing it, and then sometimes you may have to add, but then if you start to look back on, every time I grate it, I know I have to add more foam. Maybe I'm better off
not doing
backing off a little bit. So that's what I learned.
Oh, you don't cheese grate it and then take all the scraps and put it with resin and reuse
and then
it?
Light it on fire. Then light it on fire. A friend of mine used to do that, light it all on fire.
Lord.
And so, but I tell you what, I used it, and I call up my buddy Eric. This stuff was amazing. Are you kidding me? And I'm not a product endorsement guy. I go, this stuff was amazing. So he goes, it is. It's nice, right? Because he's only been selling it for like 6,
Was it like
weeks.
a European can, the cans that you take it out with the squeegee, or you still use a paint stick?
Yeah. I mean, I took one of my Bondo spreaders and I cut it to shape the can.
Yeah.
When I scoop it out, and again, you didn't use it. It was so thick and so consistent, and I'm telling you, Ed, not one pinhole.
Wow.
I was like,
nice.
Again,
and it was a better price too.
This was their $40 can, and then supposedly they make a better and then a best, which he eventually is going to be getting in.
Wow.
It comes out of California. He says, California with their
all their emissions
what they need to do, so it's a better product. Not as much dust, and again, you didn't need as much. I was very, 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 very happy with it. Now, according to them, now the next question: how about shrink? I can't answer that yet. I don't know yet. But according to him, a couple of guys that have used it, a couple of the higher end shops he deals with. One guy's been using it. The guy that does all the Cobras, I forget his name, but he's been out there for like 8 weeks, I guess, and he said he's nothing. Of course, I don't like a lot of Bondo. I don't like a lot on a car.
Yeah, I like to skim the whole, like a show car, skim the whole thing and block it, but I always try to teach the guys that you got to mentally know where it is, and you want to just know that you're breaking through. You're about to, on your last 320, if you hit it one more thing, you're going to hit all metal.
I just tell, the guys that I've tried to teach over the years that have worked for me, or I've been at different shops, it's always like, how to skim coat a car. I've had guys tell me, I was doing a 29 Buick one time with a big long fender with the body line down the middle, and I'm working at a shop, and the guy's like, how did you skim coat that whole fender? And I'm like, first of all, I think it's more than anything, you're looking at the part, you got to think of how much Bondo you got to mix up, how quick, how much harder you want to add to it so you can get the spread, how much do you want to reduce down the Bondo with the Bondo honey or fiberglass resin, whatever you want to use. Shop was very hot. I like things a little cooler. That's me. I know some guys like their shops at 80, 85.
Until you're sanding Bondo for 6
until
hours.
you're in the middle of December, you're dripping. But, if you read the back of every can of everything we work in, the perfect temperature is 70.
Yeah. Yep.
So I keep my shop 60, 65. I like a little bit of work time. Well, it does really give you a little bit more work time. The metal temperature is warm.
Yeah.
You know,
That's
you don't
a big
want it
thing.
cold.
You want the metal
You
warm.
need the
yeah.
metal temperature warm. That's just the way I like it. I like the little bit of time that I get to work with the product. But I'm also one, I like to let things, I'm a big freak about letting things dry.
Yeah, I love air drying.
That's my thing. I think that's where you get your longevity. I think that's where you get your adhesion. I got plenty of guys I worked with over the years. They would put Bondo on. Even still, they throw the heat lamp on it, and they were already going at it hard.
Yeah.
And then even over epoxy, it was flaking off. You didn't get anything.
Rushing it, yeah.
You didn't get anything time enough to dry. That's the whole secret.
It's
whole
so
business.
hard because the whole this. I think 2 years ago is when I started working on the newer cars because we had one of the guys that was in our dealer shop there, learning the speed with this, we use the UV primers for that shit all the time.
Yep.
And it's just such a different world because you're force drying everything.
Yeah.
And then you wonder why, it's like if you're going to have issues and problems and shrinking. Yeah.
It's a fail.
Yep.
You get the pucker.
Yep.
And then you're like, man, what happened? And then honestly, I worked at a place one time where they had done a Catalina long before I was there. And literally the entire top of where the trunk lid on top of the quarter panels pulled off. But when they pulled everything, when the rep came in, and the Bondo ended up being that thick. But here's the thing, there was multiple layers.
Yeah.
And the problem with that is this layer didn't dry enough, then more hardener, and this. So they ended up all not liking each other. Gassing out is the term used in this industry, to gas out. So that's, again, probably one of the reasons why I don't like a lot of Bondo is because if you got a layer on top of a layer on top of a layer, in my opinion, I don't think you're going to get to dry properly. So my thing is, why not spend the time in metal? Spend your time over here. Spend your time, when you're going to, I butt weld all my stuff. I don't like lap welding.
Yep.
I butt weld. I was taught by Tom Engel,
Yeah.
And, he did some pretty good stuff for,
Tommy built some
jars
nice
and stuff. And, I was always taught to butt weld. I was always taught my 20,000s with my 23,000s wire.
Yep.
I was always taught keep the same thickness metals, the basic stuff. And that's what I was taught, and that's how I like it. And then, hammer dolly as you go along. So the whole idea is you don't have a whole lot of work later. It's work here. The work
Passing
is
the buck. Everybody's
it's right
passed the
here,
buck,
right now. You're doing the work as you're doing the metal work. This is the time to get it right. So then you just got to come in. Who really likes doing body work?
Yeah.
Who really wants to sand Bondo? And I got another friend of mine, Rob. He's like, dude, I don't mind doing. Not me.
For a week, I'll do it all the time.
Probably because I can't because of all the surgeries. Probably because I can't. But I'd really rather. And I love those linear blocks.
Yeah,
those
they're nice.
things. I don't consider myself a body guy. I consider myself a fabricator. And they made me a body guy.
Yeah, they're amazing.
They made me a body guy.
Yeah, I think we've had the blue ones for about a year.
Yeah, they came out about a year ago.
Yeah, and I don't have any issues or anything with them. I was going to buy them from the other guy, but then a couple people said not to, so they said this the linear.
Because then you got big kid blocks. There's a couple of different. Again,
I emailed the big kid blocks originally because that's what I knew about. He never responded back. So then Mike was in, who's now working up at Swag, and he had told me you just want to go with, wasn't it Colton? No.
Colton.
Yeah. He said that's the guy you want to go with, and he spoke highly of him, so we did. And
he just came out with his own high build too.
Oh, really?
Colton just came out with his own high build primer. It's an epoxy high build. So and
I think I saw him on one of his Facebook
it's blue.
Posts. Yeah.
It's blue, and of course the whole idea, epoxy is having the zinc in it for corrosion protection.
Yeah.
So back in the day, there was, you had other different primers. What was that? Clausen at that time, that rust defender.
Yeah.
That was that beige colored primer. At the time.
One that they say converts rust. Primer.
Yeah. And that's the problem with that stuff is, back in the day when I used to use that, it was $80, $90 a gallon. That was a lot of money for primer back in that day. Boy, you had to have a customer that was really spent some money.
Now it's $800.
Now the shit I think is like $240 for a gallon. And but again, they didn't want you to reduce it, but yet they weren't making the 2.0, the 2.5 guns at the time to spray those high build primers at the time.
Yep.
So you're trying to send it through a 1.5. You'd be in there for a week trying to primer them, you know?
Oh, Joe, you said, what's funny? You know that guy, Bad Chad?
Yeah.
So I was watching one of his videos, and he had I think it was the 4-to-1 primer, and he put like 3 gallons, and he poured all the catalyst in there, stirred them all up, and then goes to spray. And I'm like watching and going, either he knows something I don't. Yeah, by the time he got to the thing, it was like literally hardening up. I go, oh, I can feel your pain. Yeah. I'm like, 250 out the toilet.
I did it. I shouldn't make fun of him because I did that.
Yeah.
I was with Pete.
Oh, really?
I was with Pete. We were doing his Mako shark.
Yeah, okay.
His Mako. And I said to him, and he's like, well, let's just put the rest of it on. I'm like, well, we already got a couple good coats on here. Let's save it.
Yeah.
You know, now let's just put the more, more's better. I'm like, it's not always true.
Pete, yeah.
But it's Pete. I'm gonna whatever you want. So he takes the hardener, pours in the remaining of the half gallon that we had. We were only doing a couple.
You know what's funny? There's always more hardener left over than there is.
Yeah.
It's must be.
Well, Evercoat makes 2 different ones. They make slick sand.
Yeah.
And they make super build. Super build is a DTM.
Yep.
That's a direct to metal.
Yep.
And that comes with the quart can.
Yep.
That you buy Hart in the brown quart one, where slick sand comes with the tubes.
Okay. Yeah, but it's funny because we went through it in I go through it all the time because we go the 4-to-1. It's like 4-to-1, but you mix it up.
It's still 4-to-1.
But I always have catalyst left over. And it drives me crazy.
Especially in the bottle one.
Yeah, bottle one. Yeah,
the bottle one.
Yeah, always left over.
And now Evercoat, you don't have to buy with that optics in it. The pink.
Oh, you can go back to just getting gray again?
You can go back to getting gray.
I like it better gray.
I bought for a while, you had no choice but to buy it. And I bought 1 can. And, of course, you're supposed to sand it till the pink's gone. How's that going to work?
Yeah, but it's supposed to, I thought it was supposed to, because I let the stuff dry for 3 weeks because you're supposed to like let the pink, I thought it had to, when you paint a wall white and it goes from pink to white, I thought you let it go out. But yeah, it was always still a little bit of pink afterward. Yeah.
And some guys, got on YouTube, and I was like, new product. I didn't know. Tried to do some my due diligence, did some research. Some guy's saying that it affected the paint. And I'm like, well, if it affected the paint, that means you were painting right over it. You weren't doing a sealer.
Which they do say you can.
They do say you can.
Yeah, so if you paint like white over it or something.
But if you don't know, why not put a seal? At least a sealer.
Seal everything
Maybe
anyways,
not 2K, then a sealer. Maybe at least just a sealer to put, something in between.
Yeah, usually if you're doing like a 4-to-1 and you're doing a nice car, you're going to seal it and sand it anyways. Like on a nice car, I don't really like doing wet on wet. But you can. The new sealers are so thin.
I was going to say the new the sealers 20 years ago when they were rubber.
Yeah.
And you couldn't sand them.
Yeah.
So if you
like using a DP epoxy PPG and then use it as a sealer, you're done.
Yeah, and if it was orange peel, you're orange peel all the way through.
Yep.
So and even then they didn't lay down very good back then.
Yeah.
I don't give a shit how good your painter was. Yeah. If you had a guy that I could spray glass. First of all, how can you spray glass when you're running an air compressor, compressed air with pressure? It doesn't work.
Yeah.
So I said, but I can but now, like you saying, with the new sealers today,
they're so different.
Man, they lay down.
I just can't believe how thin they could be and how opaque they could be.
Yes.
Because it's funny because we use the actual Nobel for all of our new and pre-owned cars, and then we're using the BASF Glazrit and stuff for our higher end show cars and stuff like that.
Right.
But the one thing that they both have in common is both sealers are thin and amazing.
Yeah.
I just sit there we'll spray you'll put it's so thin that it can't even exist and you can't see that.
Right,
That's amazing.
And when and at least now you don't feel guilty putting on, you usually want to put on 2 coats.
Yeah.
So what I do with the new sealers is I like to put on my first coat, but not wet.
Yep.
I like to put on my first one, and then just look at the car.
Yeah.
I mean, we're not perfect.
No.
So I'm going to look at the car now before I start to put a lot more product on.
Yep.
I want to take one good. I'll get my light out and I'll look for my mistakes, or the thing that I missed, obviously not on purpose, and then you look for it all. And then, before you got a lot of product on it, before things start to get too thick, before things start to get too crazy, you can do your quick little repairs, your little 800, 600 grit, and then you're not making a big mess. And now you can, okay, I'm confident enough to now put on my good second coat to get even coverage on everything. And of course, depending on what color you're using, you know.
You know what's funny? Back in the day, I used to get, this is a problem, I would get so anal about stuff, it just makes it not enjoyable. But I used to, when we were doing a PPG, I would go right up to DP and do a DP epoxy, let it dry really good, and then wet sand and buff it in black to look at the car, and then sand it and paint it. And all my buddies were like, "You're such an idiot." And now I look back, I go, "You're an idiot." Like, that was so stupid.
Well, back in the day too, some guys used to, wet sand base coat.
Yeah. Yep.
And, and then they disoriented all the metallic. And now they got to respray it. You nib out.
You have to.
Wet sand the whole.
If you see a problem, why move
forward? First of all, you just wasted a lot of money for a customer. And you wet sand it off the base coat, and then if you're like, well, you got to find your problems. Well, a little late. You just threw away a couple $100 for somebody, and the time and the effort. And now remasking, what a mess.
And your time.
What a mess. I thought to myself, believe me, I worked at places. They like to make sure they're. The old thing is prime, reprime, prime, reprime, prime, reprime, and I'm like, oh, who wants to do all that?
Just get it right.
I was never big into that stuff. I thought it was a lot of effort on my part. I thought it was kind of taking money from a customer, and I'm not, the shops that want to do it, that is absolutely fine. But I'm definitely a person of do your metal work very, very, very well. Then do your skim coat very, very well, and then do your high build, whatever. If you want to do your polyester, you want to do your high build 2K, do that. But man, you really should not have a whole lot of problems by the time you're there.
It's funny.
You should have nipped them in the
butt.
I
agree 100%. You know what's is a big problem with me right now is using the 4-to-1 versus our old Glazerith high build primer, because I get to a point where I'm like, why do I need to put it on that thick? I mean, one thing, if you're linear blocking a quarter panel this long, obviously it's going to help you with a really long, slow wave you might miss. But sometimes I'm like, you know what, because I do the same thing. You make the metal good, and you make your body work, you bring that up to 320. Then when you use your high build, you're almost using that as a, and then you sand that, and it's like, I love when people come and they look at us prime it, and they're like, your primer looks better than our paint.
Right.
Because it's like you took that time. But then now that we're using the 4-to-1 a lot, sometimes I question it, going, do I really need to put it on that thick? Because I never had before. And the Glazerith, regular Glazerith primer that we use for the restorations is thick enough, it cuts it enough. We never had big problems, never had shrinkage. I haven't had any shrinkage or anything with the 4-to-1 we're using. I actually enjoy it because it sands like dust. But you put that big 2.0 tip on there, and you dump that stuff on there, and you're putting a huge texture. And then again, we're sanding like 2 or 3 layers right off that thing, right out the gate.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, to me, when things start to get too thick, and to me, I want to say this correctly, because to me, things are getting too thick, or because you're like, well, you got to do the next coat of high build. I mean, I worked at a shop where I saw cars sometimes go to 2 or 3 coats of high build. And when I'm talking the polyester stuff, I'm like, holy cow. And I kind of thought it was more of a money maker than anything. I was like, wow, you're going to whack the guy another 60 hours to reblock this. That's kind of how I thought about it. And I thought it was a little, but then on the other side of the coin, I'm watching the guy do the body work again, finding, oh, look, good thing we caught this problem. And I'm like, yeah, but that problem should have been caught 6 weeks ago.
Guide coat your Bondo before you even prime
I'm a guide coat freak. I'm glad you brought that up. True body guys don't need guide coat. Bullshit, you don't.
We grew up,
Bullshit, you don't. You guide. First of all, the glasses. I can't see that good anymore. I can't feel that good anymore.
It's funny because I loved teaching people using guide coat, but then after you teach them, you realize it's almost like cheating. And I think that's what used to piss off the old timers when we were kids, because they would yell at us if you guide coated and you couldn't feel like we were in the wrong business if you need to guide coat.
Right.
But now you're like, no, it's so much easier.
Well, it's time and money. It's time. Our business is time, money, materials. Time, money, materials. So you know something? If I can guide coat this thing and I can get it straight in one shot,
done.
No, you're done.
Yeah.
You're done. First of all, I don't want to do it again. No. And you're done, but you just saved that guy money. Now the guy loves you.
Yeah.
Or girl, whoever you're working for. Yeah. They love you. You just saved them money. You're already on to the next thing. Because let's face it, there's 10 more cars out there waiting.
Never.
You got to get them done.
Have you done I don't know if we talked about, did you try the guide coating your clear coat yet?
Yes.
How do you like it?
I love it.
See, the last couple cars I did, because we don't do much was dark cars, so I couldn't.
Oh, you didn't buy the white?
No.
I have both. Actually, I tried to get Eric to give me the white, and he didn't. So I ended up, believe it or not, I don't really buy too much on Amazon. So the supply house didn't have it. Back your video about supply houses and all that. The supply house didn't have it, so I had to go to Amazon. And believe it or not, they only had 2 left in stock.
Did you see that Amazon's doing cars now? In Connecticut?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
It's when you and I met in the grocery store that day, I enjoy really giving my business to Eric.
Yep.
And the supply places that I deal with are still the mom and top shops or businesses, retail. I'm a brick and mortar guy. I'm sorry if I offended somebody, but I'm a brick.
No.
I want to go in. I want to look at this. I want to ask a question.
Yep.
Hey, what do you think? That's me. That's who I am. I'm still a little old school when it comes to that stuff. I just put Venmo on my phone yesterday. So I'm definitely behind the times, but I'm behind the times to a certain degree, but I'm also willing to try new products all the time. Yep. But since I don't have sales reps comes to my shop, I don't stay up. I don't Kimberly-Clark. I don't have any of those companies coming to my shop.
Well, what the problem is, I think you'd be disappointed in the sales rep coming to your shop because the stuff that you and I do and we grew up doing, we know how to do it on the restoration side doesn't cross over. I mean, obviously you were doing new car stuff too, but it's like the really thin paints, everything's thin, and the UVs, all that stuff that you really can't use. So it's like, none of them really know anything about the restoration side of it.
No.
And they want to tell you. I had one of the young guys in, won't say his name, but trying to convince me to switch over to their paint line and swearing about this one thing. And I said, I tried it. Very expensive. I said, why am I going to pay more for something that when I could just buy Glazer? You walk out in the shop, Rick will be like, well, everybody's like, it sprays like Glazer. He goes, then why should we change?
Right.
But so he was pushing this paint line. So we tried it. And I said, it flowed out nice. It'd probably be a good production clear or whatever. But I said, you can't sand and buff it. And he's like, oh no, it's great. We sand and buff it. So it made me feel like I did something wrong. A year later, he used it for the first time.
Oh.
He says, I did my truck. I can't stand the buffet. I see what you're saying. I go, you lying son of a bitch. When you were selling it, you told me how great it was.
TransStar came out with a clear years ago, 4 or 5 years ago. According to them, your one coat in a 1.3 tip was like putting on 2 coats, what they called their medium wet coat.
Yeah.
Okay. And you only needed 2 coats. 2 coats, medium wet, equals 4 coats of, okay.
Yep.
The one thing they didn't tell you, 20-minute flash time.
Yep.
20-minute flash time. Okay, that's standard at 70 degrees, whatever. Okay, which we did at working for a shop on a 66 Chevelle. We come in the next day, solvent pop everywhere.
Oh, man, that's the worst.
And I mean everywhere. From the beginning of the hood to the end of that trunk lid, up and down the sides, it literally looked like...
Not just top surfaces.
Nope, everywhere.
And it was deep?
Yeah. So let it sit, put it out in the sun, let it sit, all the way through. I mean, you could take a needle, go all the way through. I'm like, what's going on? The one thing TransStar forgot, they said it, 1 coat equaled 2. So your flash time technically should have been double. But on the TBS sheet, they were still saying 20 minutes. So you trapped. You trapped.
See, you know what, the flash time is killing me right now because I always had a problem where the paint systems I grew up using, the PPGs and the BASFs, this is how I portray it in my mind, which I know I'm going to be wrong, and I'm sure Chris, if he watches, is going to break my balls. But I like to paint where you put 1 coat on, you let it flash, you layer your next coat on, you let that flash, and you layer your next coat on, you let it flash. And then there would be certain things, which you use now is the Sickens, where you would put like 1 coat on. When you put your second coat, it basically reactivates kind of the first coat. So now it's a thicker coat. And so you want to put that on as thin as you can, as wet looking as you can. but keeping it thin so you don't have that solvent pop.
Right.
And so we ended up, I never had a problem with PPG. Used that for years. Glazra, which I absolutely loved. And then because we were trying to be competitive with the new car stuff, we had to switch over to the Axle Nobel. And I'm really glad we did because, Chris and our guys that brought us over there, the paint line is incredible. Price-wise, it's like amazing. Yep. But when you try to switch it over to restoration, it's a nightmare for us. And it was a solvent pop issue. And like if I put their paints on, even their higher end paints, and you put like 3 coats on it, you want to put it on thin, let it flash, put it on, not let it flash, you want to put it on wet and like 10 minutes hit it again. You don't want to let that sit. Like I'm used to like, you let it sit for 40 minutes, you put your next layer on it. So that's really tough to get used to that, not having that solvent popping.
Right. And of course doing restorations, I mean, I'm some guys are going to flip, but I have shot base on Monday and gone in Tuesday and cleared.
Yeah.
And I know people say that's voodoo, but yet then again, industry reps, industry standards say you usually have up to 36 hours. I've never had a problem. I've never had a problem.
Most of it does. It's funny that our tech reps. I won't say the company I work for because they're not supposed to, but we had 2 tech reps and Mike's not with them anymore. But it cracked me up because we had Chris and Mike would come in together, and Chris is by the book, fundamentally exact, which is hard for us restoration guys to be. And so he'd come in and he could only tell you exactly how to do it. And I tell you what, if you do it exactly the way he says, you are a painter. Yeah, everything comes out mint. All the new car stuff is exactly the way it does. But when you get to the restoration side, you can. So he would turn around and literally Mike would be like, don't listen to what you say. Just do it the way you were thinking.
I've heard, believe me, I'm like you. All the shops I worked at, you use XYZ companies, epoxy primer.
Yep.
Okay. Then you use whoever for Bondo. Yep. So you've already stepped out of the bounds of the company who the paint product. No paint companies make Bondo. So now, okay, I'm already using a foreign product for your paint, so to speak. So now I've already stepped out of that. So I use if I use epoxy, if I don't, I'm bare metal, and then from there I'm doing my body work, and then I use slick sand or Evercoat, and then I use kind of whatever paint I feel like buying from Eric. I'll go down.
What paint systems are you using now? Because he changed. I think he just changed again, right?
Yeah, he changes all the time. I mean, I don't even, honestly, I just, the paint I just did, it was in a tin can with a label on it. And he's always like, I've never had problems. But then, I mean, I'm more of I like to keep my environment good and clean. I like to make sure I don't have my problems. I don't dig into them. I will be honest and say, I have never been brand loyal to anybody. I have never, ever, and I know people are going to be mad at me for saying that, but I have never been, you have to put PPG primer over and PPG paint and then PPG clear. I've done it with when Sal used to sell chroma base. And I used to buy the chrome primer, the chroma base, and then chrome. Over the last 25 years of my life, I've used whatever I felt for primer, whatever I felt for base, whatever I felt for clear.
It's funny because if you apply it right, like I've been with you on that, because if you do everything right, you never have a problem. You really don't have a problem. It's usually when you rush it or you do something stupid.
You just said it right there. Problems come from, again, I think problems come from rushing, not letting things dry. I think gas out. Gas out is your biggest problem. A lot of your solvents and things come from Bondo, first of all, not maybe mixed properly. So you have some Bondo that actually has no hardener in it, so it's never dried. That's gonna give you a problem. So when you're mixing Bondo, even if you're mixing a pretty good sized board, because you're gonna skim coat a panel, right now, the one thing you should be 100% focused on is making sure that Bondo is 100% mixed. That's your only priority right now is to make sure that's mixed properly. Because if that's not mixed properly, that's not thoroughly mixed, you already got a problem over here. You just don't know it yet. You don't know it yet. So, and when you swipe off that spreader and you see, oh, I still got some hardener there. You better be mixing again.
Well, it's funny you said, because that's the number one problem with training people right now is that everything you do, you have to worry about what you're doing in that moment. Whether it's mixing your Bondo, like I tell the guys when you're mixing paint, A lot of the cans look similar. Just stop. Read the label.
Read the label.
Make sure before you dump that shit in there, because it's not like it's $10 a gallon anymore.
Right.
You know, and just paying attention. If you're sanding, pay attention to what you're sanding.
All the guys, when I've ever either interviewed for a job or when I have guys that have worked for me in my shop, I always say the biggest problem really is I don't expect anybody to be perfect because I'm not perfect, but the biggest problem with most shops are mistakes cost money.
Yes.
And it doesn't matter if it's me as a one-man operation, shops that got 10, 12, 15 guys. I'm sure the big shops that got 35, 40 guys. You got a guy that constantly keeps making mistakes, or 2 or 3 guys that constantly make these little mistakes.
It's even more money.
It becomes even more and more overhead. So when I had a guy work for me part-time, and I was always telling him, look, even taking a car apart, I know that piece of sheet metal is all rusted and rotted. Yep. I'm not an air chisel, whack it all out, because now you bend a whole bunch of other things. Yeah. Now we're fixing all that, straightening all that out, when you could have just taken the time, drilled out the spot weld properly. If you can't get to a drill, take the belt sand grinder, grind out that spot weld. Now we don't. That bracket is right where they put it 55 years ago. It's not here anymore. Yeah. So you already started a problem. You started something now.
Drives me crazy.
We didn't do a measurement or something on it, so now we've already started a problem. Yep. So and it might seem small. Oh, it's going to go right back. Is it?
It's like that every step that we do. We just went through that because I was trying like a Keon learning. We had one of the other guys, wet sand the truck, wet sand. Everything goes in, all the cracks, all the gaps, everything, and then leave it. No. Now you got to go back, try to clean that stuff off. You're making more work for yourself. Right. And they just don't understand that. Like
that's what I've always tried to instill. Younger guys that have, because I was a teacher at New England Tech at one time, and I was teaching. They were, when Lincoln Tech got bought out by Lincoln Tech.
Yep.
They were going to start a hot rod program.
Oh, I remember that. Yep.
They were going to compete with Wyotech.
So it was like Richard Markham went to do airbrushing there around
Yep. And then because they were going to compete with Wyotech and everything at the time, and I got hired.
Oh, nice.
To run the program because a friend of mine ran the actual automotive program. So I got hired to do it.
Oh, nice.
And I was there a year. So then I was just teaching regular automotive, and I'm there teaching. And after a year, they're like, "Yeah, we decided not to do it." And I was like, "Okay."
Yeah, it faded out quick. It was like
it faded out. Yeah. Although a couple years ago, they called me up. They wanted me to. They closed the one on John Downey Drive in New Britain. They wanted me to go to South Windsor, and I'm like, nah, because I have my shop up and going. I didn't want to close it all down and do all that now. So, but anyway, so I believe mistakes cost money, and if you keep making the same mistake, that becomes very expensive, and then it creates other problems down the road, which I think, like you and I were discussing before about. I'm not brand loyal to using the same brands, and I know some guys are definitely going, this guy's a hack, this guy's a hack. I just never had a problem.
And then once you screw up, it's like if you don't let the paint dry and it's wet and you go over it, you just cause this train reaction of never, just start over.
Well, I got a friend of mine that, you paint out, do a whole complete paint job on a restoration. On Tuesday and Wednesday morning, he's in the radio West End and Buff.
Yeah.
I'd be like, "What are you doing?" And then he's starting off with 800 grit, and then he's like, "God damn, I can't get this scratch out." Well, no kidding, it's still wet.
Yeah.
Of course not.
Yeah.
Of course not. Again, that's if you actually go on Colton's for linear block.
Yep.
I mean, he's a big fan of putting cars outside and letting them dry. I firmly believe you do an overall. When you paint that Mustang out there, and it should sit in clear coat for at least 3 or 4 weeks before you start to wet sand it.
Yeah, I used to have a thing where what I would do is I would come out and just with no pressure, like either the next day or
knock
within 2
off
days.
The skin.
Yeah, just real light because it seemed like it would just breathe better, and then let it sit for a week or whatever.
I mean, I know some guys give, it's got some dust in it. Let me tell you something. I painted in a million paint booths in my life, and freshly clean, freshly repainted. Now they got the carpets they put in paint booths. Now they're getting away from spraying the water in there now, and there's still dust.
Yeah, it's hard. Well, do you know what's different? It's overalls are a lot more complicated than panel repair.
There's a lot.
Yeah,
you're painting a lot. I mean, as we're sitting here in this studio, we don't see dust.
Yeah.
but it's in here.
Yeah, oh, yeah,
it's
yeah.
floating around, it's flying around.
Yep.
You know, got the little heater on.
Yep.
It's doing something. So it's always out there. Even in the paint booth, even as soon as you, matter of fact, when you close the doors on a paint booth, you just, and you just introduce dust. And even though you got the fan on, it's constantly, and then you look down by the doors, you see a little air movement.
Yeah,
You're
tough.
bringing it in.
Yeah, you got to have that. It's hard because that's why it's hard for like shops like us, because what happens is like it's nice when you get like a production shop where you have your clean rooms. Like even when I was a kid, Papa's Dodge, when I painted there, they had the dirty room where they did all the body work, but then they had the intermediate room, which was probably 20,000 square foot, and you'd bring the cars in there, they get cleaned, they get masked, they get taped, and then you bring it into the paint room, and that would really eliminate a lot of, and then you're never, when you're a painter alone, you're never in a dusty environment, so it's like those all help, but that's a lot.
So it's not coming off of you.
Yeah.
Right. It is a lot, and in a perfect world, but you know, let's face it, you know as well as I do, 97% of the dust's going to wet sand out anyway.
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know?
If you're sanding it and buffing it,
and even you like I get dust all the time, and you know, that's coming out. No problem. It's going to come out. It's going to come out, and you know, so
for our used cars, we work really hard on making sure there's minimal dust because you want to you can't afford to sand and buff those things.
No.
So you just got to get them out, but it's.
Yeah.
You know, and it's hard, and it's like, it's funny, because, you know, I was using the static zap gun wrong, and again, Chris corrected me on that. I would just do it the first time, and then base it, but I didn't realize you're supposed to do it in between every base.
Between coats.
And so then we switched that, and that helped out. All the little things help out, but like with restoration, one, you're usually putting on so much paint that you want to cut the urethane wobble out, you want to really get aggressive with that, so you're going to put a massive amount on.
Absolutely.
So it's crazy.
So I just feel that, you know, we are in an imperfect world, so you're not going to have perfection come out of that booth. Come on YouTube, how many times, and a guy is so proud, as he well should be, of the paint job. And I was just watching last night, and I'm sitting there going, oh, there's dust. And I'm not making fun of the guy. I'm sitting there going, man, that guy laid down some nice clear. But again, in a beautiful $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 paint booth. But I guess just my point is, just be proud of the fact that you just laid down a beautiful coat of clear. It's a beautiful, no zebra striping, no modeling in the paint. Everything came out beautiful. And I know there's guys in there that sit there and make, oh, look at the guy's got dust in his clear. There's every paint job. They all do.
Yeah.
That's the real truth. The real truth is they do.
Yeah, a lot of guys, when you get good in a production environment, you can denib it. If there's something.
Yeah, I mean, look at even that show, Bitch and Rides. I mean, at least they were honest enough to show them, hey, here they are in that big dollar paint booth they got, and they're denumbing out of base.
But it's funny because, I mean, I'm telling you, it's overalls, especially when you do metal work, body work, and like not like Honda Civic body work now, like mud the whole car, block the whole car, prime the whole car. There's so much dirt, so much dust, every crack, you blow it and you wet it and you do that, but there's just so much surface area that it's hard not to.
It's going to happen.
Yeah, it's going to.
I think it's just going to happen. I just, I just think it's inevitable. It's going to happen, and I just don't think it's anything to be ashamed of. Believe me, when I get done painting a car and the customer comes in and there's dust in it. Okay, Lord, it's all going to wet sand out.
Yeah.
And really, that's going to come out. Absolutely, it's going to come out. If I was that worried about it, I probably would have showed you.
Yeah, it's funny because I remember some of the guys, like Tucci Engineering back in the day. They did that. I think it was a Falcon tire truck. One of them, I remember they showed the picture and they basically had them like a machine shop that they just tarped off the whole thing and painted it. And that was one of the baddest trucks you'd ever see.
Well, let me ask you a question. You, me, and most of the other guys we know doing this, we all started in a one-car garage or a two-car garage. There's not one of us that didn't.
Now, some of the younger guys, I think that's what's hard for them is they never did it. And Joe, when he worked here, used to always say, if you can't do it under a shade tree, you can't do it at all.
Absolutely.
And that's how we grew up. But the problem is a lot of these guys, like it's weird for me when I hire a guy and he says, I worked in a body shop for 20 years and all they've done is take a fender off.
Yeah.
Because like you or I, you build the whole car, you do, and that's how it was. But it's a different world now. These guys literally, like some guys, all they've done for their entire career is prep a car, tape it off, and that's what they do every day. They're great at it, incredible at it, but they never had to do metal work or body work or that stuff, so that's different.
Yeah, to get into what we do as far as restoration, I am a mechanic. When the first comes in, you're the disassemble guy, so you're a mechanic. For a week or two, you're a mechanic as you're taking the motor out, the transmission out, the frame off. You're a mechanic. Now you're a mechanic.
Yeah.
That's one toolbox.
Yeah.
Now you become a fabricator. Now you take out your other. Now you're a fabricator for a month, 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, 5 months. You're a fabricator.
Yeah.
Now you put that box away. Now you take out your blocks. Now here's my body. So now you're a body guy for the next 3 months, and now you're that guy. And now then that box gets put away. Now comes out all the paint guns and everything.
True.
Now you're a painter.
Yeah.
Now you're a painter for 3 or 4 days.
Yeah.
Now you're, and a month later, now you're a detail guy. Now you're the guy wet sanding, buffing. Now you're the assembly guy. So now you're the guy putting the car back together, putting all the chrome back on, putting the door handle.
Plumber, yeah.
You're now you're back to a mechanic. Now you're putting the motor back in, putting the frame back on. So I find that
it's a lot.
Every 6 weeks I have to change my hat.
It's so true.
And
yeah.
I'm on to the next thing. So my knowledge is
It's good when you have
to
ADD, I guess.
Well, I've had to learn a lot. I never had to learn just that one or two things. I've had to learn it all. And I guess, some friends that I've had and some friends that I've lost over the years is because I was the guy that you called. You'd come to my house or whatever, I fix it, whatever. And I was that friend. I was like, oh, okay. And then you won't see him again. I'll get you a case of beer. Oh, that's good. I don't drink beer that much. I don't drink beer that much for you to buy me a case of beer for working on your car for 4 hours. I'd rather have that thing called money. My buddy. And you find out over time that they needed you. You didn't need them.
Yeah.
I know what I'm doing. Most of the time, anyway.
Yeah.
I know what I'm doing. So I don't really need people to. I don't really need that type of friend, I guess, anymore to sit there and go, to call you up and pick my brain for an hour, 2 hours. I had another friend of mine that would talk to me for 2 hours about how to paint something because he's going to paint it.
Yeah, yeah.
He's going to paint it.
I just had a guy, it was funny you said that because he literally, he's like every time he only calls when he needs something. And it's been going on for 15, 20 years. And so he called me, came in, and I'm just waiting for what do you need? And he doesn't need anything. He drives away. I was like, holy cow. And then all of a sudden, my phone rings. Oh, I forgot to ask you.
Well, I've had also friends of mine that call me up to ask me a bunch of questions about doing body work, and then they're disagreeing with everything I'm saying. Then I'm sitting there going, then I don't understand why you're calling me. Because, I'm not giving them the answer that they want. Because we all, 3 or 4 guys that do it. Well, so-and-so said this. Then, okay.
Yeah.
Go with him.
Yeah.
That's just, here's the thing. You and I when we were at the grocery store, I was not born. I didn't come out of my mom going, hey, I'm a body guy. I didn't know what I was going to do in my life. And so I only know what I was taught. The beginning basic things I was taught by a couple of guys that I learned to do it with from when I was 14. I was taught by this one guy, John, and then I went to Tommy, and then I went to this other. I went to different guys over the years, and I learned things. There was no internet back then. There were some schools here and there, but I didn't.
Yeah.
I went to Rhode Island Trade School, but that was for auto mechanics, But it was. But there was no rest. You couldn't go to school for restoration. No, there was no such thing. You could never ever think to go to school for English wheel and plant. No way.
Yeah,
That
no
was
air
not even
brushing,
available.
nothing.
So I've learned those things for being at different places at different shops. So if I was taught something, then evidently I was taught wrong. That's the way I was taught by somebody who his end result was awful damn good.
Yeah.
And now I'm not looking at the car that we were doing. I'd be looking at cars he did 15, 20 years ago. Man, they still look beautiful. So I think that's a testament.
Well, do you know what I found the funny part is? Everybody always talks the most shit and will criticize how someone does something and everything. They've never done anything.
No.
But then the guys that I know that do stuff always say the same thing. I could be better. I'm not as good as it's like humble. It's just the opposite.
I have to admit, even the time we met at the hardware store, like I said to you, I still like learning. Even at my age, I still like to learn new products. I have to admit, again, when I go down to see Eric, at his shop, his supply house, he knows that I like.
What is the name of his shop?
Discount Auto Body.
Discount Auto. Okay, I always forgot.
And I love Eric and Jen, and I love Don, the father. And again, I like to help them out. I mean, I like to help them. He's got a wife, 2 kids, 2 young daughters, and I like to, if I'm going to give somebody money, I like to give it to him.
Yep.
He treats
There's
me.
not a lot of
Treats me
independent
so
shops
good.
left.
First of all, I don't argue about the prices.
Yep.
And I'm not saying that because I know I'm passing it off to the customer.
Yep.
I don't argue because Eric takes really, really, really good care of me. I mean, we have become friends. We're friends, but he takes good care of me. But he also knows that I'm ready to try a new product. Hey, I know who's going to try this. I know who try, and I'll give him an honest answer. If it's junk, in my opinion, this particular thing is not very good. But again, for what I do for restoration, maybe for collision it would come into
totally
play.
different, yeah.
But for me, it's not going to work. Okay, and when he first started carrying, we had Rage. He carried Evercoat. He carried the low end stuff.
Yep.
And I was like, dude, can we kick it up a notch? Get into the Rage Ultra. First it was Gold, then Ultra. My customers aren't going to spend that. And back then it was $89 a gallon.
Yeah.
I go, well, then buy me a case.
Yeah.
So he got me a case, and I went there to go get it. Well, he sold one of them, but he knew I wouldn't be upset.
Yeah.
I didn't even need the whole case.
Yeah.
I was just ordering me the whole case. So next thing you know, the guy that bought that case, hey, can you get me another? Then he started selling it. So,
it's good stuff.
It worked out good for him. And then that's why when this new bundle came along, he's like, I think Jay might try it.
Yeah.
Like
it's hard because I care about the price, but I've always been like, you pay more for what's better. But it is hard when you're paying $127, $137 for a gallon of filler now because you're still paying it. And no matter what,
it ends up on the floor.
Everybody else always thinks, like you say, you're passing the buck to your customer, but your customer still has to pay that. And that adds to this tremendous overall price.
You try to be conscientious. I certainly 100% try and be conscientious of my customers. And I think the customers that certainly like me, that are happy with me, and I think even the customers that maybe I have made upset over the years, because let's face it, I've certainly have made people upset. That's just business. That's just, if you can't understand that about business, then that's just business. But I think all of them would at least say, I was always at least very conscious about how I was spending their money.
Yeah, you have to.
It's, and because I don't do these big, $100,000 bills. I'm not that shop. I'm not that guy. I've never had that customer, first of all. And I also don't go looking for that customer. I'm not saying that I maybe couldn't find it, but at this point,
because you did like the cars for ground up and stuff like that, right? You did a bunch of them for those guys, didn't you?
Yes.
I remember seeing them in the showroom, and they looked beautiful.
Yes.
That was nice stuff.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I did a few of their cars.
So those weren't huge dollar bills. You took care of those guys too.
I was in my house. I was doing.
Really?
I painted those in my house when I was working out of my house. Yeah, yep. And I don't. I think as a restoration shop, you have to just kind of decide what market you want to be in. And I didn't. Let's face it. I'm not ever going to be a Bobby Alloway. I'm not going to be a Dave Kindig. I'm not going to be a Troy Piani. I'm not. Yeah. I'm not there. I'm not going to buy a pullbacks machine. I'm not going to buy. I'm not going to buy all that equipment. Now, again, part of it now, I don't want to say that I'm old, but at my age right now, I am not going to sit there and invest into all that money. I'm not going to do all that. First of all, if you don't have that base of customer that's willing to spend that kind of money, that right away, that's going to say, hey, look, I mean, you go on Texas Metal, go on their website. Yep. Their start cost bill is $175,000. So I don't have that customer. Yep. I don't have it. I don't, but I've also never gone looking for that customer. Yeah. I'm not interested in it.
Yeah, they're hard to find now. It's not like it used to be.
I do a lot of, anything I do kind of custom is really more for me on my time, on my stuff. Like I got my 71 Nova that I'm building, and I'm trying to be a little, I was going to talk to you about doing some interior things for me, so because you can't buy green right now. It's green.
Still?
It's green interior. I can still buy black. I don't want black.
Yeah.
Everybody's got black. I don't want black. So I thought to myself, I'm going to be calling.
Yeah, I wonder if green's never going to come back because there was like reds and whites and all those things during COVID were gone, and we had to actually custom make them from
well,
scratch.
according to like ground up and stuff, because I'm very good friends with Teresa and stuff. She says they don't ever plan on making.
It's done. Yeah.
Making colors.
I am so disgusted because when our sales reps come in, the limited amount of sales reps that we have, especially for the upholstery part, they literally, one guy comes in once every 6 months and he just takes our books and cuts chunks of shit out, gone. And last time he came in, and the Zodiac, the metal flake vinyls that look like the House of Colors.
Yep.
I always loved those because I grew up like going to Bradley's. You're like, as a kid, you're on those little stupid things.
Sure.
So they just came in and they just cut out, like there's only like 3 colors left.
Yep.
And I'm like, going, that really sucks that they're just gone forever,
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, some of that, like Count Custom stuff,
Yep.
that's his thing. That's,
the
that's
flashy
Danny's,
shit.
That's Danny's stuff.
Yeah.
That 70s, the Voodoo,
Yep.
Voodoo Larry and all them
Yeah,
guys, they like that stuff, and which is cool.
Yep.
It has its place.
Yeah.
There's that niche for it. I think that age demographic is starting to get a little lower.
Yeah.
I don't think trying to find a 25-year-old kid today is going to like that kind of stuff.
I think the hardest part about it is that the price to do something that's almost like gimmicky, and corny. It's like fun from when you were a kid. It still costs the same thing as doing something like real.
Yeah.
So it's like if you wanted to build like a Kindigit car, or you wanted to build a car that's with purple metal flake.
Right.
And it's going to cost you the same. Like, where do you really go? Like, actually, I've got to be careful. But I was talking to the guy with the Bug Eye sprites a couple of years back. The Bug Eye guy. He takes his like little sprites, does them real cool shit. But he was basically telling me that he was trying to get it so that you could do a turnkey and purchase it like you could buy a Cobra. Right. So like if you go on a backdraft Cobra for 80, 150,000, you could buy a Bug Eye Sprite that's all electronic and converted. And I go, that's pretty good. Until he says it's going to be like 80 or 90 grand. And then you're like, oh, at my point, if I'm going to spend 80 or 90 grand, as much as I think they're cute, a Cobra's a hell of a lot cuter.
Yeah. Yeah.
So then you're like, where does that go?
Well, it's kind of like you buy a 1930, 31 Ford stock 4-cylinder, 15 grand, 18 grand.
Yeah.
But you buy that car, you bring it home, you strip it all apart, you slam it all down, you channel it, you chop it, put a small block Chevy in it, Ford 9-inch, you turn it into a hot rod. That's a $70,000, $80,000 car.
Yeah.
It's the same car.
Yeah.
But you took as Chip Foose would say, you took the ugly out of it.
Yeah.
So it's about perspective too. The one thing I will agree with a lot of these shops is they're fads. Like the motorcycle thing was a fad.
God,
I mean, I was involved with it. I when I was working for Tommy Angle and stuff, with Cliff.
So what you were right there in the beginning when Tommy, because it sucks when Tommy
the
passed
old
away.
Building.
He was right there. He would have been the TV show guy. Like they were talking about it, and then he died, and it was horrible because he had it going, and what the funny part with Tommy, he had it going before it was the TV fad. Yeah. It was like he had a legit crew of people that were spending the money building that.
The bike he was on was going to be an Easy Rider.
Oh, the one, his customer's bike.
I had just finished up a couple other things for him. He had like 4 or 5 bikes that were going to be in photo shoots for Easy Rider. Yep. And that particular bike was going to be in a photo shoot. And he was it just got done. Yeah, so he was basically riding it.
Which bike was that?
It was, I don't even remember now.
Yeah, it's so.
But he was in the middle of building a house. And
he had a lot going on.
And him and I had a little bit of a falling out because I had my daughter, and he didn't have any kids at that point. And when I was taking time off, I was working for him at night. I'd go in at night, and he kind of wanted to keep me away from the other guys. And I would go up at night and do my thing. He would do this stuff, get all this done for me because he had the top and the bottom. Yeah. So I'd be upstairs and doing a lot of fabricating and stuff. Downstairs was mostly the collision stuff. Yep. So I'd be upstairs at night doing things, and nobody knew I was there.
So you were actually doing bike stuff up there then?
I was doing bike and cars.
Okay.
And bike cars.
You're saying the old building? That's right.
The old building in the back, not the new one.
Yeah, because after he moved out, his brother-in-law or whatever, Steve, went up there with Snap-on stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was in there doing stuff, and then. But then I was taking time off with my daughter. My daughter was playing soccer, and he didn't quite understand that. And him and I got into a little shouting match one time. Yeah. And I was like, well, at this point in my life, my daughter's more important. Because I come up here after I work all day at Middletown Toyota, then I come here.
Yeah, it's a lot. Yeah.
And I now I want to coach my daughter. I want to be a father too, and I can't do both. Actually, when they were doing the Frank Marauder show all the time at when they moved it to the convention center over there, or whatever that
Yeah.
was, the expo center or whatever it was. He was in the PPG booth.
Yep, I remember
And,
that. Yep.
He saw me, and my father had just passed away. So, and both my parents, they died.
Oof.
Right. 3 months away from each other.
Oh, that's horrible.
So he ended up saying, "I'm really sorry about your mom and dad, this and that." I said, "No problem." And he goes, "Hey, you want to come back doing a few things?" I said, "Okay." I do, a couple little things here and there. He had a 56 Ford he wanted me to go work on. So I said, "Okay." So I went back, I did a couple of things. But then he had his daughter.
Yeah, it changed. Yeah.
So then he called her boob. The next thing I know, I was probably back there about 7-8 months when he's like, "I really need to apologize to you about
Yeah, reality check then. Yeah.
having my daughter is everything to me." And he totally changed his whole perspective, and then the accident happened.
Yeah, it was hard. It was hard because he was go, go, go. Like I was there.
And he was big in boats too.
Oh, everything. Oh my God.
He was neck deep. Boats, snowmobiles,
constant.
bikes, the whole.
All those guys were. It was funny because I remember doing all the stuff for those. That's how I met them. Is I rented his old shop out. Obviously, I knew Jimmy and those guys a little bit. Actually, I didn't really know. I knew Johnny and those guys and way before, but then Jimmy, because we were behind him. Because
Right.
basically, when Tommy moved to the new shop, I went to his old shop, and then I did all the detailing and interior work for him. It was kind of funny because Tommy really is what got my leg into the upholstery business.
Okay.
Because he came in and was like, I was detailing cars. Can you do this? Can you do that? And it was funny because I remember he started having me do all his car upholstery, and he was having Kenny up at Redan do the motorcycle seats.
Ooh.
And I sucked at car interiors, sucked. I'm like, why is he giving me this stuff? The motorcycle seats to me were fun and easy,
Right.
But the cars were so much more involved, and he would just keep giving me all the car stuff. And I would look at work that Kenny up at Redan would do, and I was like the Corvette seat. I'm like, this guy is amazing. Like, why am I doing the car stuff for Tommy? Well, I know because he wasn't paying me shit. Oh my God.
But it chooses you. But then I don't know. I think you always want to get better, and I still, even to this day, I still kind of want to keep always getting better. I'm always looking to be better. I'm always trying to be better at my body work. I'm always trying to be better at my painting. I'm always trying to be better. And I know some of my friends, dude, man, you do good work. You do good work. I know, but you can always, if you don't think that you can still keep achieving, because there's nothing worse, and I know I'm going to offend people, but there's nothing worse than a know-it-all.
Oh my God.
Because a know-it-all first of all, doesn't know as much as he thinks.
Yep.
And you had I believe a former employee that was like that.
Lord.
Because you're not, if you know so much, how come you're not showing me the result?
Yep.
And that's, I guess, so now I'm asking you, show me the result, because you're telling me you know so much. And I don't ever want to admit I know everything, because I certainly don't. Nobody does. And I certainly don't. And I still really like learning. And I know you've gotten a little, you and I have had discussions, you're a little burnt out. And I'm not going to lie and say I'm not tired. No. I've been through my health issues. You've had your health issues. We've both, I've knocked on on doors death, having cancer. You certainly have. Yep. But I came out thinking, okay, I want to keep doing better, and I keep trying. And I think I'm better for it. And I think knowing, when you don't know something, it's so easy, much easier to say, I don't know. Yeah. But here's the other thing.
It's humbling and
we
real.
have that phone thing, which is a mini computer. We have so many ways to find out the information, where 25, 30 years ago, when you and I were starting out, we had to knock on a door, be humble to the old miserable bastard in the corner and say, hey, Henry, would you mind if I ask you this question? What do you want?
I think
you fucking young kids, all you do is, and you're like, okay, look, man, I'm sorry, man.
I think that's why we did better, though, because I think this is too easy, because you would appreciate, you worked hard to get that opportunity, and then we would spend, it wasn't like we just looked at a video and said, oh, I wasted 10 minutes on this video, now I know everything. You would spend years of your life to get the respect from another person that knows what they're doing, just to do that. And these things, you could, we go on YouTube, we do stupid how-to videos, and the problem is I could show you, you could watch me do a sand bondo on a fender until I give you a Model A rounded fender or something like that, and you have to do it because you realize, like Keon learning, it cracks me up because you get to witness someone learning from scratch, and there's so much more involved than just what you see on the video, because it's putting the time in and putting the effort. But yeah, I agree 1,000% with what you're saying. Totally.
I think not knowing everything is good because that means you're willing to accept the changes that you need to make at times. LSs are already starting to die off a little bit.
Yeah.
They're already starting to die off. I consider that when all that LS stuff came about, again, my opinion, I thought, well, this is the motorcycle thing all over again.
Yeah.
When I was homesick with cancer, when I was homesick, I had the 57 Chevy, and a friend of mine put it on eBay for me. I needed the money.
Yeah.
And I'm not gonna, Ed, I will tell you right now, I bet you I had 25 either OCC bikes or West Coast chopper bikes. And I was only asking $22,000 for the car.
Yeah.
It was mini tub 4-speed, 57, two post car, and everybody was wanting to trade me a bike. And I'm saying to myself, of course, these are custom bikes, so the VIN numbers are a little...
Yeah.
So I'm like, you know,
something's going on.
If you can't sell it for 20 grand, what makes you think I could bring it from the West and sell it, or, you know, or encourage choppy from being around? I can't sell the bike. No. If you can't sell it, I can't. Because first of all, I'm not a bike guy. Yeah. I'm not. I built them, but I'm not a bike guy.
Yeah.
And I said, so I'm not. I don't know the market. I'm not going to go for it. I'm not interested. But it just doesn't make any sense to. I got $80,000 tied up in this thing, and you're only asking 20, and you can't get it.
Oh my God, that was bad. There was so many $80,000 bikes selling for $6 grand.
Well, remember Drag Specialties, the catalog?
Yeah.
It was that thick.
Yeah. I just threw one away yesterday.
Yeah. I mean, I remember looking through when I was working for this other guy, and we were building a lot of bikes, building custom frames and stuff. I remember looking through the catalogs, going, "Man, there's a lot of shit for motorcycles." And then I saw that I saw that thing dwindle and dwindle.
Yeah, the bike business is so horrible right now. I'm trying to find shops to come on for the podcast here, and I'm like, luckily a guy came in yesterday, told me about 2 shops, but I just got a call after. You know, they're actually bike guys doing cool shit. Because it's like when you really look at them, it's amazing. Like we had 1,800 dealers, and it went down to like 6.
Yeah.
You know, it's crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
And then I was in Terryville. They had Mustang seats there.
Yep.
So, you know, it's everything. I think it's.
Oh, you were way up there?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
I grew up in Terryville.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that was their office. Their main place up in Mass is huge.
Right. Yep.
I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah, where they were up by the Terryville Fairgrounds.
Yeah. I was always amazed at the motorcycle business because, like, I'm a motorcycle seat nerd, but Mike Corbin started here.
Right.
Well, actually, he started, and that's where Al Simmons worked for him as a sales guy. Okay. And that's why Al started Mustang when they went through a divorce. Mike moved to California, I guess, and then Al went off on his own. And Mike's ex-wife had kept Corbin Gentry, it was called.
Okay.
And he started Corbin out there. But it was kind of funny because the 3 major motorcycle seat manufacturers were Corbin Gentry, Corbin seats, and Mustang seats. They were all right here. Actually, Corbin Corners is named after Mike Corbin.
Oh, okay.
Because he was, I guess he was like best friends with the mayor or whatever it was.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Oh, so some weird stuff right here.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
I didn't know all that stuff. And I think things that, you know, they run in a cycle. So I mean, motorcycles, they're always going to be the motorcycle. You're always going to have your diehard motorcycle guys. You're always going to have your diehard hot rod guys, your old school hot rod guys. Until that generation kind of dies off a little bit, but hopefully, you know, I got a lot of guys my age, maybe a little bit younger. They still love the old school stuff, cars and bikes. You know, they still like that stuff. But the generation behind them, like even like my cars, you know, I've said to my daughter and my son-in-law, "Well, you guys can have my cars when I'm dead." And they look at me like, "What are we going to do with them?" You know, my son-in-law doesn't even know how to drive a 4-speed.
Yeah.
So I'm like, my daughter's like, "Yeah, you might want to sell them."
Actually, you know what's funny? The guy used to work down here at the gas station, or at the deli years ago. I guess here forever. Nice guy. And I was talking to him, and one day he just opened up, and he's like, "I effing hate my daughter." I'm like, "Whoa." And I'm like, "What's going on?" He goes, "Well, I got sick." He used to have a lot of money, nice house, cars, everything, a lot of muscle cars. He goes, "I got sick, went in the hospital, he thought I was going to die." While I was in there, my daughter went and sold 69 Camaros for $2,500. Oh. Done cars. Like, just got rid of everything he owned, and then he lived. Oh. And he comes out, he goes, "I'm working at a convenience store." He goes, "I had all this beautiful stuff. My daughter didn't know how much it was worth. They just unloaded everything." I think at some point, what's tough about life and business, especially as we get older, is that the business completely changes, and if you don't change that portion of it, you're done. And so, like, the waiting 2 months for a part to come in, you can't really do that anymore because our customers are not patient anymore. They're just psychopaths.
I mean, when the pandemic happened, it was a little bit of understanding. I mean, I didn't really like kind of sitting around not being able to get things, and it was definitely tough because you can't get paid. You also can't get paid. So it's like, hello, I'm still trying to make a living here.
Yeah.
And it's not the customer's fault. It's not my fault.
It was impossible.
But so that was difficult. I was lucky that the customer for the Camaro I was working on at the time, he put a huge commitment into, we needed a set of rockers for a convertible, which are totally different than a hardtop one.
Yep.
And he made a big commitment to drive. We finally found, I think, the last set in the United States at a small sheet metal dealer way up in upstate New York. It was like a 10-hour ride. So he hopped in his truck, him and his wife and his daughter for the weekend, went up, got him, and the guy didn't mark him up, no nothing.
Wow.
Got him. They stayed overnight, went to Niagara Falls. And all kinds of-
nice.
Turned it into a nice weekend
Nice.
and brought him back for me. But it kept the project going because I already had the
That
outer
was
wheel
so
wells.
tough. That COVID time was just horrible. Oh, my
It was.
Lord.
It made things difficult. It made things
The
difficult.
amount of money we lost and the amount of issues we ran, like every time I thought something, like I originally was like freaking out because I'm like, you're going to close down. What do you do? Because like, you know, you still got to pay your bills and be in business. You don't just stop.
Yeah.
But then all of a sudden, next thing you know, everybody's home building stuff. So we started selling a lot of products. You're like, okay, great. But then you can't get employees. No one's working.
Right.
So then you can't provide this stuff. Next thing you know, you finally get through some of those challenges, and then you can't get any parts or materials.
Right.
And then the 2-week, 3-week back orders became 6 months, a year,
Yeah.
2 years. I mean, I remember I called up.
Or sometimes we don't know.
Yeah, big time. We had, which I don't even think it ever came back. So I forgot what the texture was with the vinyl tops for like the Monte Carlos and stuff like that. I forgot, someone had recommended them to me, which is a good friend of ours. And the guy came and gave a deposit. We ordered it, and they said it's going to be 2 months. So I tell them 2 months. Oh, Jimmy sent them over. So I go 2 months. No problem. 2 months come up. They're saying another 2 months. No problem. They're saying 4 months. Now there's a problem.
Yeah.
So I'm like, you know what? And the problem is like we had 1,000 deposits.
Right.
So now I'm like, do you guys have these guys call you every day so you can tell them 2 months, or you just say, let me refund you.
Right.
And watch. And so
Yeah,
we did. It was like 150 grand.
Yeah.
It's like it hurt. It was like
Yeah.
horrible. And,
Oh, yeah.
And then people are pissed they're mad at me, but not mad at the fact that all that vinyl was made in China.
Yeah.
China decided to stop making it. None of our distributors will get it. They thought they were going to get it, and it's to trickle down, but we're the
Right.
guys dealing with the customers, so we're the assholes now.
Well, it's kind of like what was that? PUI Interiors?
Yeah.
They're made in the United States, but they're not. The patterns, from what I understand, are cut but assembled, I guess, here, from what I was told.
Yeah, I don't know if
So I guess that's what happened. So that was one thing that happened. But like right now, I'm not a political person. I'm
Yep.
not into all that
Yep.
kind of stuff. And I just, the Camaro at my shop,
Yep.
I said to the guy, I'm going to go off my experience with the pandemic.
Oh, that's right.
When we couldn't get anything.
Yep.
So I don't know what's going to go on with this tariff thing. Again,
Yeah.
it's not that I understand it. I don't know what's going to happen. And it's got nothing to do with your political, who you voted for, whatever. I don't care. I'm telling you, off my experience of the pandemic of being able to get products.
Once you start seeing both parties freaking out
The
about
one
things,
thing
we're the
I
ones that get
do
screwed.
know is everything we need does come from China. Let's face it.
yeah.
American muscle cars, but all the parts come from
Yeah,
China.
Taiwan, yeah.
I hate to say that to everybody, but that's the truth.
Yeah.
All these things that we get for Camaros, Chevelles, Mustangs, it all comes from China.
Yep.
So I said to the guy, to err on the side of caution, what do you say we order? We put a big order in. And again, I don't really want all the parts here because we're not ready to do it. But what happens if something does go bad and all of a sudden we can't get these parts for 6 or 7 months? Number one, your car's not going to be ready.
Yeah,
It's not going to be done. Number two, I'm not getting paid. I'm just sitting here. I got nothing to do. So what do you say we just order everything? We get it here, at least get as much as we can. Get everything here.
Yep. Be done with it. Yeah.
And be done with it. That way it's all here. And he's nice enough. He only lives like a mile from my shop, so
nice.
he'll keep the stuff at his house. I said, I just don't want it.
Yeah,
all
at least
here.
he has it. Well, it's hard because we've lived through that COVID shit, and now you look now, and now the stupid drone thing they're freaking out about, saying they're going to cut down, talk about stopping air traffic or something like that. And it was funny because everybody was freaked out last night about it, and I go, what are the odds that aliens have been here for 1,000 years? But they create a drone that has flashing lights and makes noise.
Yeah. Well, I think it's one thing. It's kind of hard to believe that we're the only living thing in the universe.
Yeah.
Obviously, a long topic to get away from cars. But I think it's kind of hard to believe that we're the only living thing around here.
You have to be crazy to think. Yeah.
But again, I'm just part of being in business and everything is the knowledge of this is what happened literally a few years ago. We're able to get parts. So again, taking politics, taking everything aside, my best interest to you as you being my customer is to advise that we should order parts just in case.
Well, the one thing we learn is history repeats itself.
Because it's good for both of us. It's good for you. It's good for me. I can keep working. He's retired. He's had the money put aside for years. So let's just keep. It's the best way to keep the project going. And he was. Thank God he was 100%. Thank God he's got the money because he's like, man, I kind of wish I missed you 10, 15 years ago because the car would have been done 10, 15 years ago.
By now,
But at least he's open-minded enough to say, yeah, absolutely, let's get everything here. Because more than anything, his drive to want to drive the car because he hasn't driven it in 35 years, he wants to drive it. He wants to use it. And it's going to be beautiful. I mean, rally green, white vinyl top, white interior. I mean, come on.
Yeah, you don't see those. That
car's going to make a statement. It's a flat hood car. It's an early
It's funny when you see the white, contrast. It's so nice, but you never see that anymore.
You still going to be doing vinyl tops?
Yeah. Once I drop dead. Well, when you're in the business, we have to take it. You got to do it. You just don't stay. I can't do it because the sheet metal is stamped wrong. You have to fix the sheet metal.
Believe me, and I know guys, and you may know a few of them too. I know guys that are like, I'm only going to put a quarter panel if it's NOS. Really? Well, there's certain cars you're not going to find an NOS quarter panel.
A lot now.
And there's certain people with their budgets aren't going to spend that kind of money on an NOS panel. But the problem is, I put on NOS panels, and when you get an old stamping, they're not that great either.
The cars weren't good when they were new.
So that's the thing. You're talking about a car made from the 60s or 70s where the gaps weren't really that good. Things weren't that great to begin with, from brand new. So when you're putting on something that you're replacing an old rotted piece, so whatever you got is really bad. And okay, the piece is made in China or whatever. First of all, I already know I got to do something to it. It's not going to fit that great. It's not going to line up that great. But I already know what I got to do. And I already know where I got to make my adjustments. So then you get it on to the best possible. So, of course, your door gap's going to be a little big on the top, maybe a little tight on the bottom. But the quad panel's on straight, and you're on straight. You're where you need to be. But it's just the way the panel's made. But you have to give it that. Now you have to just give it that optical illusion.
AMD had a video where they were saying that they've been working every year on improving it to correct the factory gaps because the gaps were so off.
Well, of course, AMD was a company that, their stampings are over there, but their quality control were American.
Yeah, because they're all Taiwan, right, or something?
China, is it? Yeah, wherever Taiwan. But their whole idea, their claim to fame really was their quality control people were U.S. US. So they were over there working, making sure that their stuff was
Well, what was weird, I noticed, I thought it was kind of weird. I saw it, which I haven't heard anything about it, but I thought it was weird because they were really trying to sell their metal to people restoring cars. But then there was a brief time where they were really advertising highly of their own in-house restoration shop.
Yeah.
So
an AMD repair center down in Georgia.
Yeah, so you still do that?
Yeah. Well, that guy was always independent. George or Charlie, whatever his name is.
Oh, it's a separate thing.
He was always an independent. Now that guy JB works for him, whatever. But he was always a separate entity.
Okay.
And he became an installation center. Remember when Goodmark, you could become a dealer years ago for Goodmark?
Yep.
When I worked for Brian, we became a Goodmark dealer. And that was, so you didn't have to become an installation center for them, but you could become a dealer for them. That way you could buy at a better cost. And that's kind of what that guy was. He became an installation center.
Oh, okay.
And but that's all they do though. They only do sheet metal. They don't do body and paint.
Oh, okay.
Only sheet metal.
That's why I thought it was weird, because someone was telling me basically they're starting their own restoration shop. I go, but then aren't you competing with the restoration shops? But then the whole industry just went sour right at that point.
Most collision shops, you bring your car to a collision shop that needs restoration, it sits in the corner. Number one, they really don't have a guy that really knows how to do it. It's definitely a different skill in collision.
Yeah, totally different.
And they don't have that guy that wants to do it. And then the car sits there and it gets lost in the shuffle over time. And because there's a lot more involved to it. So a guy really there was a big need at one point to have a place where a guy can go, just get the sheet metal done. Because then a body shop was willing to do the body and paint on it. So they just didn't want to do all that metal work.
Yeah, it's hard because I think what's happening now too is one of the reasons why it's so difficult to find the sheet metal guys is the new body shops. The cars are done so much better.
Oh, yeah.
And it's so much easier with the specs to pull frames and do things that you have to do, and you know where to put it. And with the old cars, if you don't do it all the time, you are the person, you're the frame machine, because you're you're lining everything up. You got to know where everything is. You got to center everything, and there's a lot more involved and a lot more time. So I think it's just a totally different business.
Well, when I've spoken to guys when they've come in, and when a car comes in, and I'm just with my tape measure at the moment, and taking references, and what are you looking for? See if it's hit. I mean, this car's 50, 60 years old. It's got a long story behind it.
Yeah.
And it may not be a good one. So let's find out. Let's find out. I mean, look at us as human beings. We're pretty beat up by the time we're 55, 60 years old. We're a little beat up. So the car's the same thing. So you first just do a couple measurements just to kind of get an eyeball of a little bit of squareness to find out, I mean, you get behind the car. If the car runs and drives, drive it. If it's not dog walking, okay. But still, pull off unibody cars. You want to start taking some front measurements and everything, even full frame cars. I did a GTO one time where, man, when we unbolted it, oh man, I was like, holy cow! And if you looked at it, you never would have known that frame was that bent.
We actually had a car that came from a shop, and I won't say the name, but they were at final body work, they thought they were ready for paint, and the customer brought the car, pulled it from them, brought it to us, and first thing I do is put all the gaskets on and make sure the door's shut. Because everybody does metal work and forgets to put the gaskets on.
Yep.
And so I put the gaskets on, the doors wouldn't shut, put it on the trunk, and the trunk was that far off. So I'm like, what the hell's going on here? This is major. And we found out that it was hit. It was 5/8 of an inch off.
Oh, yeah.
The body was racked.
Yep.
And now what do you do?
Right.
These guys are thinking that our car's ready for paint, and you're like, we got to car shit off and move it. It's like crazy because no one, unless you've done it, you don't know.
No, that's why I just got another Camaro that just came to my shop too, and it's like, I put it on my body cart, took the frame off, put it on the body cart, and the first thing I'm doing is I'm inspecting underneath, and the guy's like, what are you doing? Well, I'm looking for previous damage, because it still has all the original floor. Everything's in original. Nice. So that's going to tell us our story.
Yeah.
It's rotted. It's rotted, but it's going to start telling us some of the stories that we're looking for.
Yeah.
That we're looking for. I see the right side rocker's got a pretty good dent in it. What are we going to do to fix that? I said, you'd have to pull it, but I said, I usually just cut them out, and then I just fix it really on the bench. Yeah. So I said, we're going to do that, but I said, but we're going to start finding some little stories, some little crinkles, some here and there. That's a factory crinkle. That should be there. That shouldn't be there. So these are the things we're going to start looking for. Come to find out, really wasn't that bad. It really was. It was just rusted. So I mean, when they came out with that new one-piece floor for any car, and a lot of people ask,
but they don't slide right in though.
They don't. But a lot of people ask me, why would you want to put a whole floor in? Because here's the thing: the way I look at it, I'm going to perimeter weld it the way the factory did. So I'm kind of putting in a factory piece where instead of the half floors back in the day, and then I'm doing the entire weld.
And it kind of saved for the price of the cost. And you think about patching panels in and spotting everything in. Sometimes it's easier.
I think
just
it's
to
faster.
Put it in. Yeah.
I think it's faster to put the whole floor in, and that's what I do. I just tell people. Of course, too, with a Camaro, I make them buy me the new seat pedestals.
Yeah.
They're $49.
That's not worth
I go, do you really want me to drill out 120 spot welds to save a part that you could buy for $49 where I'm going to have two hours? The labor I'm going to spend getting these two things out that together, buying brand new are only $90, isn't worth the labor it is for me to save this. It doesn't make any sense. So you just plasma cut all that out, I mean, obviously after I have the car all especially convertible, you reinforce, but still, you get all that out, you get it all trimmed up. If you don't have to do inner rocker work and toe board work, I mean, I've got it down to 20, 25 hours.
It's so much more enjoyable too, because it's like, I always calculate, like when we used to do like the hot rods, where you build a hot rod from scratch, it's fun because you buy the panels, you weld them in, you customize it, you do your stuff, and it's more enjoyable and you're allowed to do more creative stuff, whereas the restoration work, cutting the rust out, drilling a million spot welds to put the same panel in, hammering and dialing it to get that piece correct to save your $40.
Right.
It's insane.
Yeah. I mean, I like both. I'm a custom guy.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm definitely a custom guy. I mean, I like restorations too. And I guess when it comes to restorations, I just don't like things over restored. I don't know if that's the right way to say it. I know some guys, are when I mean over
kinda
restored,
takes
I
the
mean
fun out of
so
it, yeah.
they're so pretty, so perfect that you kind of don't really enjoy it. And I'm really not gonna, even when I go to a cruise night and car show, I don't really want to hear the whole history of this, car of how it's this and how it's that. It's kind of boring.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm more interested in.
I don't know if it's like if it was us 40 years ago, if it'd be different.
Yeah,
But you've heard the same
when
story.
customizing, you were only customizing cars from the 30s and the 40s. But I mean, I know a lot of guys. How much more can you do with a '69 Camaro to customize it? I don't know. Some of these higher end shops have been coming out with some pretty cool shit.
Yeah, they're crazy. Well,
stuff that I don't do, stuff that I could do, but I don't have the customer for it, which is fine. I'm not at this point in my life. I'm not chasing that dream anymore. And I'm comfortable where I'm at. But to sit there and see what some of these guys, what comes out of either the designer's mind and then goes into
there's some insane. And now with all the new CAD stuff they're doing with all the, it's amazing what they're coming out. I look at something like Avant-Garde Design that does the interior work down in Florida.
Yeah.
It's like everything's digitized, everything's made on the plastic injection machines. Yeah, it's just
I mean,
it's crazy.
If I was the 35, 40-year-old version of me, I would be interested in going down that road. But it's just
the equipment alone is just, I don't know how they do it. Like you're gonna have, like, that's when you said that before. That's what reminded me, because I go through the same thing. I'm like, at this point in your life, if you had an extra $1 million to spend, would you spend it on investing into something that we're probably not going to be really around to reap the benefits for?
No, I look at it. I mean, I have a brother-in-law who's done very well for himself, and he's 70, and he owns a well drilling company.
Yep.
He's done very well for himself, and he's worked his ass off. He has earned every penny he has, but yet the other day he says to me, he's thinking about building a big brand new building at 70.
Yeah.
I mean, he has a younger brother who's in his 40s that's going to take over the business someday. But I'm still going, at 70, you want to get involved in building.
But it's funny because a lot of guys
with
the collision shops now, that's what they're doing. It's funny because I know a lot of guys that are in their 60s, 70s in that era, and they're like, okay, we need to get this new welder because for aluminum it's $80,000. Right. Okay, just grab that. Oh, we need to build an entire building now to house that, to do that. Just do that. Mm-hmm. And they're still doing it, but maybe the income is massive.
Think if you already got the money there, I think he has enough money where it's kind of more of a write-off for him at this point in his life.
Yeah.
It kind of ends up being more of a write-off
and he's probably running the business now.
I need to get rid of some money.
Yeah.
And the best way to do that is he's always been very good about buying new trucks. Number one, the expense of maintaining an old truck becomes not worth it. So you're better off buying something new. But again, tax advantages, taking advantage of those taxes. Same thing now to build this new building. It all just goes through the business. But again, he's got 25 people that work for him. So he the expense, the money, the cash flow is there. Where again, I guess I've lost some of my desire as far as that goes.
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you.
I'm very, again, I'm comfortable. I mean, you haven't been down to the shop for a long time, but I'm comfortable with the setup that I got right now. It's very one-man friendly.
Yeah.
I think that's the right way to put it.
It must be so nice to be able to know where your tools are and everything is where you want it. I miss that because every time I go to look for it, I can't find it. And now I just get so pissed. Whatever testosterone I have, you'll find it in the morning when I come in to look for a fucking screwdriver.
Well, you got to take a minute. I mean, you're not that far from me, so take a minute, come down to the shop again and to see.
Yeah, the last time I was there, Pete's kid was next door. Is he still there?
No.
Oh, no.
No, that wasn't working out. Thank you so much. I just want to say thank you, man. I enjoyed it a lot more than I thought I was going to enjoy it. I don't know if we touched on everything we wanted to talk about. But I enjoyed it. I had a good time.
I think it was great. I appreciate you coming on. I think totally. It's like I was excited when I saw you. You said you would come on because it's tough to get people to come on. It's tough to get real people.
I have somebody else that might be interested. So obviously, people say, "Hey, let me know when you have it on."
Yeah.
I'm like, well, I that's why I kept telling you, let's be careful about what we say because we have things in common that we're people in common that I want to be careful, and we're both still in business to this day.